Chapter 45-75. Some of the buildings in the ruins still have restrictive spells. Could it be that the things inside are still intact? When Elder Anshi searched the surrounding buildings, he found that many of the buildings had intact restrictive spells. This made him wonder if the treasures inside were also intact. Thinking of this, Elder Anshi used brute force to smash the restrictive spells on the surface of the building in front of him and stepped into the building. The divine herbs are intact. There are also intact divine artifacts in the room. Elder Anshi searched around and his eyes shone brightly. Although the divine herbs and divine artifacts in the building were of very low levels and could not catch his eye, he knew that these buildings were not real ruins and there were also treasures. If I can find those celestial phenomenon level caves, then I will have some gains. Elder Anshi smiled and conveyed the news to Jun, Li Yinglong, and the others. He began to search for intact buildings in the ruins. Jun was still standing on the stone sword. He naturally saw the message from Elder Anshi. However, he did not intend to search for treasures in the ruins. Instead, he lowered his head and looked at the stone sword under his feet. The moment he stepped on the stone sword, Xiao He in the macro world shouted that he wanted to swallow the stone sword. "Boy, let me swallow this stone sword. This dragon lord will go one step further and reach the fourth sky of eternal realm." Xiao He shouted again. "Xiao He, this stone sword is ordinary. Are you sure it's okay for you to swallow it?" Zhuan asked with a strange look in his eyes. From the beginning, he had been observing the stone sword, but he did not notice anything strange about the latter. The stone sword in front of him was too ordinary. It was not rare at all. "What do you know? This stone sword is extremely extraordinary. Its material is beyond your imagination. This dragon lord will definitely benefit greatly if I swallow it." Xiao He snorted coldly. "In that case, why don't you swallow it? What's the use of telling me so much?" Zhuan shrugged. Xiao He awkwardly scratched his head and said, "There's some kind of restriction within this stone sword that requires you to break it." "I can't break it." Zhuan raised his eyebrows and felt a little puzzled. He had carefully observed the stone sword and did not find any traces of restrictions on it. Hidden inside the stone sword. Xiao He was a little anxious. She rushed out of the great world, transformed into a sword beam, and suddenly stood on the stone sword. Rumble! With a loud explosion, the stone sword collapsed and shattered into countless pieces of stone. Inside the stone sword, a blazing golden light shot up into the sky. Only then did Zhuowen discover that inside the stone sword, there was actually a sword embryo inserted upside down. This sword embryo was extremely irregular, and its entire body flashed with golden light. It could be seen that this sword embryo was extraordinary. However, there were complicated runes around the sword embryo, which protected it firmly. The material of this sword embryo is indeed extraordinary. No wonder Xiao He was so excited. Zhuan nodded in his heart. With a wave of his sleeve, he took out many array discs and began to break the restriction around the sword embryo. The restriction around the sword embryo was not very strong. Zhuan spent about 4 hours to completely break it. Zhuan quickly put the sword embryo into the great world and said to Xiao He, "Go into the great world and refine this sword embryo. It's too eye-catching to refine it outside." Xiao He nodded and slipped into the great world. From the ferryman's memory, there is a palace buried deep underground in the north of these ruins. There may be good things there. Zhuan looked north. He was not in a hurry to go there. Instead, he followed Li Yinglong, Elder Anshi, and the others to search the nearby ruins. Overall, they had gained a lot. In some intact buildings, they had obtained many divine medicines, divine weapons, talismans, and other treasures. Although these treasures were of very low levels and were not worthy of their attention, the forces behind them needed them. Let's go. The real treasure of this continent is deep underground in the north. There is a palace buried deep underground. It is the abode of an elite with the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth. Zhuan said with a smile. Then he led the group to the north. Finally, they stopped in a bamboo forest. In the middle of the bamboo forest, there was a wordless stele. "Zhuo Xiaoyu, the palace is under this wordless stele?" Elder Anshi asked. Yes. Zhuan nodded. He took a step forward and punched the wordless steel. Rumble. The wordless steel shattered into dust and scattered all over the sky. In an instant, the surrounding bamboo forest turned into a whirlwind and disappeared. Zhuan and the others appeared in a vast underground cave. In front of them stood a palace that looked like a giant beast. This palace was completely forged from divine gold. It was dazzling and resplendent, and it emanated a noble and gorgeous aura. The owner of this palace is really extravagant. He built a palace with divine gold, Duan Jipeng said with a strange look in his eyes. After all, this is the abode of an elite with the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth. It is definitely not simple. Elder Anshi and I will walk in front. Family Headley will bring up the rear. After that, Yuan and Elder Anshi walked into the palace. As soon as they stepped into the palace, the huge palace door closed automatically. According to my memory, the owner of this palace is the disciple of the owner of the ruins. His cultivation is about the early stage of the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth. He is a genius. Zhuan said lightly. If he is only at the early stage of the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth, this abode should not be so dangerous. Li Yinglong said with a sigh of relief. He and Elder Anshi were both at the early stage of the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth. They were not weaker than the owner of this abode. It should not be too difficult for them to break into this abode. Next, Zhuan and the rest went deeper into the palace. During this time, they encountered many traps, but they were easily blocked by them. Finally, they came to the deepest part of the palace. There was an altar here. In front of the altar, there was a black skeleton sitting cross-legged. The skeleton stretched out its right hand toward the altar as if it wanted to grab something. Is this black skeleton the corpse of the owner of this palace? Even the skeleton is completely black. He must have been poisoned. Elder Anshi carefully observed the black skeleton. His eyes were solemn, but he did not dare to touch the skeleton. If the owner of this palace could be poisoned to death, it meant that the poison was very terrifying. It could even kill an elite with the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth. What's wrong with this altar? Is there something on it? Duan Jipeng came to the front of the altar and asked Zhuan and the rest. Zhuan came forward and saw a bottle of black potion in the center of the altar. There was only 2/3 of the black potion left. Zhuan didn't know why, but when he saw the black potion he actually felt dizzy. Chapter 45-76. This potion should be poison. Someone sent the poison here through the altar, and then the owner of the palace took the poison and committed suicide? Elder Anshi said in a deep voice. Zhuan and the others nodded, thinking that Old Man Anshi's words were reasonable. This poison is very rare. Even in the Archean Heavenly Tao Academy, there are very few poisons that can kill lawful phenomenon of heaven and earth experts. Can you give it to me? I can take it back to the Archean Heavenly Tao Academy and exchange it for a lot of contribution points. For this, I won't take any of the other things in the palace. How about it? Elder Anshi cupped his fists to Zhuan, Li Yinglong and the others, and said somewhat embarrassedly. Senior Anshi, you're too polite. This poison is useless to me. If you want it, take it. Zhuan said with a faint smile. Li Yinglong also said generously, I agree with Zhuo Xiaoyu. This poison is useless to me. Take it. Elder Anshi cupped his fists again to thank everyone, and then carefully put away the poison. Now, let's search with confidence. It would belong to whoever found it. As for Senior Anshi, you'll assist us. If you find something, we'll distribute it. Zhuan said. Everyone nodded without objection, and then they searched every corner of the palace. After searching for a while, everyone found something. Duan Jipeng found a divine sword at the third sky of the eternal realm, which was extremely powerful. Lia and Xiang each found a bottle of third sky of the eternal realm divine pills. Li Ying and Li Shuo were quite unlucky. They found nothing. Li Yinglong, on the other hand, found some powerful talismans, both offensive and defensive. Zhuan, on the other hand, found an amber token in a secret compartment with the word army written on it. This is a commander's seal. Zhuan's eyes narrowed slightly as he muttered to himself. He knew about the commander's seal. The ferryman had mentioned it in his memory. Tan Penghong had once trained 108 immortal generals. These immortal generals were not living creatures, but puppets that Tan Penghong had refined. It was said that the 108 immortal generals were all above the early stage of the law phenomenon of heaven and earth. The strongest immortal general had even reached the middle stage of the law phenomenon of heaven and earth. If such a well-trained group of 108 immortal generals were to attack together, they would be able to contend against a late-stage law phenomenon expert. The commander's seal had always been under Tan Penghong's control. Zhuan did not expect that he would actually find it in the cave residence of the owner of this palace. It seems that Tan Penghong thinks highly of this disciple. He even gave the commander's seal to him. Zhuan guessed. "Let's go. There's nothing we need in this palace," Old Man Anshi suggested. Everyone was rather disappointed. This palace was a little poor and its resources were actually so scarce. It didn't seem like a cave abode that a lawful embodiment of heaven and earth expert should have. A true expert would never put good things in his cave abode, but carry them with him. It's already a great fortune for us to be able to find something in the cave. Zhuan could not help but laugh when he saw that everyone was rather disappointed. Little friend Zhui is right. After the owner of this palace died, he didn't even leave behind the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth. Clearly, the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth couldn't withstand the poison and collapsed. The real treasure inside was also destroyed. Old Man Anshi smiled bitterly. Everyone sighed with pity. They knew how rich the resources of a lawful embodiment of heaven and earth expert were. If this person's law phenomenon world had not collapsed, they might have been able to make a fortune this time. "Let's go. I know of other good places. We can't hang ourselves on a tree," Zhuan said lightly. As soon as he said that, Duan Jipeng, Luo Ya, and the others immediately perked up. Next, Zhuan led everyone to the other two continents. Although they had gained something from the other two continents, it was actually not as good as the first one. Where is the real relic? It's really hard to find it. After leaving the third continent, Liang could not help but complain. Old Man Anshi, Li Yinglong, and the others could not help but look at Xun. They knew that Zhuan had obtained the ferryman's memory. Could it be a clue? You don't have to look at me like that. The ferryman's memory I obtained is incomplete. In other words, I actually don't know which continent the relic is on. Zhuan smiled bitterly. Suddenly, a terrifying loud noise came from afar. When Old Man Anshi, Li Yinglong, and the others suddenly looked up in the direction of the noise. They saw a blazing and terrifying light erupting in the distance. They were shocked to find that the surrounding continents were rapidly moving in that direction, as if attracted by a magnet. What's going on? These continents? Duan Jipeng was dumbfounded. He looked at the continents flying past, completely confused. Let's go. Let's go to one of the continents and have a look. Zhuan suddenly shouted and led everyone to jump onto a continent fragment that was passing by. The continent fragment was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, it seemed to be so close yet so far away. Look, there are also people on that continent. Suddenly, Li Shua pointed to a continent fragment thousands of feet away in the east and shouted. Zhuowen and the others looked in that direction. Sure enough, they saw a team in that direction. The leader of this team was an old man with a golden lamp in his hand. He had a benevolent face and looked like an ancient Buddha. It's Golden Lamp Dharmaraja from the Divine Blaze domain. Old Man Anshi said solemnly. Zhuan took a deep look at Golden Lamp Dharmaraja. He always felt that although Golden Lamp Dharmaraja looked benevolent, he actually gave off an evil feeling. He did not know whether it was his illusion or not. It seems that many people have the same idea as us. Zhuan looked around and found that in addition to Golden Lamp Dharmaraja's team, there were more people in other directions. They were riding on the continent's fragments and were quickly flying toward the place where the white light had appeared. Zhuo Xiaoyu, what a coincidence! We meet again. Suddenly, a charming and sweet voice came from the left rear. Zhuan narrowed his eyes and could not help but look to the left rear. There was a shuttle-shaped continent fragment following closely behind the one Zhuan was on. In front of this shuttle-shaped continent, there was also a team. The leader was a charming and beautiful woman. This beautiful woman had a pair of beautiful and charming purple eyes. Her every frown and smile revealed extreme temptation and charm. The moment Juan saw this beautiful woman, his eyes turned cold and he said coldly, "Amethyst King, what a coincidence! I can't believe I met you." This team was Zixuan and the others from the purple chestnut domain. "Little brother Zhuowen, do you have a problem with me?" Zixuan looked around and giggled. Zixuan's giggle made Li Ying and Li Shua, who were on Zhuowen's side, look infatuated and smirk. Li Yinglong's face changed dramatically. With a wave of his sleeve, the infatuated Li Ying and Li Shua immediately woke up. "Don't look into her eyes," Li Yinglong warned seriously. Li Ying and Li Shua lowered their heads in shame. They felt very ashamed that they had been so easily charmed by Zixuan. What a powerful bewitching technique! Zhuowen's eyes were solemn. He felt that Zixuan was more and more difficult to deal with. Chapter 45-77. Amethyst King, you are a senior. Don't you think it's beneath your dignity to attack a junior? Elder Anshi's face was solemn as he looked coldly at Zixuan. Zixuan chuckled. Her purple eyes were filled with coldness as she said, "Elder Anshi, don't slander me. I was just greeting you. How is that considered attacking you? You, on the other hand, are very good at slandering others." Elder Anshi frowned and snorted. He did not refute her again. Just as Zixuan had said, she had only glanced at them and did not show any signs of attacking them. Moreover, Zixuan's charm technique was very subtle and impossible to guard against. Therefore, Elder Anshi had no evidence to prove that Zixuan had attacked them. "Little brother Zhuowen, you have strong self-control. I have looked at you so many times, but you are so heartless. You don't even look at me." Zixuan glanced at Zhuowen with her beautiful eyes and curled her lips. "Senior Z is in a high position and has a high status. How can I compare to you? Naturally, I don't dare to look at Senior Z," Zhuowen said lightly. Zixuan sneered in her heart. When she was about to say something, her subordinate suddenly exclaimed, "Your Majesty! Look ahead. What is that?" When Zixuan heard this, her beautiful eyes looked to the front. Her pupils abruptly shrank as she said, "This is..." Zhuowen's eyes narrowed slightly. He also looked to the front and his expression changed slightly. In the center of the starry sky, a gigantic white celestial body appeared. This white star was extremely huge and located in the center of the starry sky. It had a terrifying gravitational force that attracted countless continental fragments. Countless fragments of the continent surged into the white star and melted into surging lava, creating terrifying waves on the surface of the star. "Retreat! We can't stay on the continental fragment." Zhuowen shouted and took a step forward with everyone, leaving the fragment under their feet. Zixuan and the others also left the continental fragment. Not long after Zixuan and the others left, their continental fragments entered the white star and melted into flowing magma. What is this white celestial body? It seems to only have a special gravitational force on the continental fragments in the starry sky world and has no effect on us outsiders. Old man Anshi looked at the white celestial body in front of him in horror. He could feel the terrifying power contained within the white celestial body. If they were sucked in as well, they would probably be melted into ashes. Sakyamuni? Zhuowen's eyes were like torches, and he immediately discovered a team floating on the other side of the white planet. This team was Sakyamuni, Ghost Child, Su Jing, and Mi Hao Miao. They were the closest to the white star, almost at its edge. Sakyamuni, in particular, frowned and stared at the white star. He didn't even notice that Zhuowen was looking at him. In addition, Zhuowen also discovered several teams nearby, such as Jinluan Fuang from the Divine Blaze domain, Jing Li from the Cloud Dragon domain, Blood Robe King from the Blood Thorn domain, and so on. Zhuowen also saw Guan Yihan's team from the Void Yama domain and Gong Shuekuan's team from the Profound Thunder domain not far away. These experts were all surrounding the white star, staring at it with solemn eyes, as if waiting for something. Guan Yihan and Gong Shuekuan naturally also noticed Zhuowen, but they only nodded at him and didn't have the slightest intention of approaching him. It seems that the only thing we can do now is wait. Yuan sat cross-legged in the starry sky, his eyes like torches, staring straight at the white star, quietly waiting for it to change. Old man Anshi and the others nodded and didn't act rashly, but waited silently. Zixuan also put away her joking attitude, her beautiful eyes looking seriously at the white star. No one knew what she was thinking. Finally, all the fragments of the continent in the starry sky gathered in the white star. In the blink of an eye, the entire starry sky became empty, as if a lot of things were missing. The white star is changing. Duan Jipeng suddenly whispered. Everyone looked over and saw that, after the white star had merged with all the fragments of the continent, the oval sphere began to distort, like a mirage in the water. Rip. Suddenly, the white star turned into the shadow of a giant. The giant exuded a white light all over, and his face was unclear. Only his eyes seemed to contain thousands of worlds, revealing an ancient and vicissitude aura. The wheel of history has begun to turn, evil spirits roar in the abyss, and all living beings sink in the sea of bitterness. The door to the abyss has been opened. Those who enter this door must give up everything. The giant softly recited the words in the map fragment, and then continued, "Congratulations to all of you for entering this door. Are you willing to give up everything? If you're willing to give up everything, then come in." After saying that, the giant slowly stood up, and a huge door of light appeared in his chest. Zhuowen furrowed his brows. What did this giant mean by deliberately saying this? Abandon everything? Could it be that he was abandoning everything he had? Did it include family, friendship, and love? Thinking of this, Yuan was a little hesitant. His Tao was not the Tao of ruthlessness, but the Tao of emotions. If he gave up everything, he would be denying his own Tao. Not only Zhuowen, but many of the powerhouses present also showed hesitation. Everyone had something that they could not give up. Pretending to be mysterious. A middle-aged man snorted coldly and took large strides toward the giant's chest. Zhuowen looked at the middle-aged man. He remembered that this person should be a powerhouse among the rogue cultivators. His cultivation was not weak, and he had also reached the early stage of the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth. However, when the middle-aged man just appeared at the giant's chest, the giant looked down at the middle-aged man and asked indifferently, "Can you give up everything?" The middle-aged man sneered and said, "Of course, let me in. Your most important thing is your illegitimate son. He should be in your lawful embodiment of heaven and earth world. Now, if you drag him out and kill him, then you will be qualified to enter this door." The giant said indifferently. The middle-aged man's expression changed drastically. He stared at the giant and said, "How do you know I have an illegitimate son? Kill him or not?" The giant did not answer the middle-aged man's words. Instead, he sat cross-legged in the void and looked down at Chun. His voice was like thunder, exploding above the space. The middle-aged man's face was pale. He could not help but take dozens of steps back, trembling all over. "That's my only bloodline. How can I kill it?" The middle-aged man roared. "Since you can't give it up, then leave. You are not qualified to enter this door." The giant said indifferently, "Nonsense. If I want to enter this door, I don't need your permission. Today I will enter." The middle-aged man's eyes were fierce. He took a step forward, and his entire body began to expand rapidly. In an instant, he expanded to the size of 1,000,000 feet. Chapter 4578. After the middle-aged man displayed the law phenomenon, he roared and rushed toward the giant in front of him. The giant's eyes were calm and serene as he stood in the middle of the starry sky. When the middle-aged man's law phenomenon rushed toward him, he gently raised his hand and grabbed forward. Bang, bang, bang. Terrifying explosive sounds rang out incessantly throughout the entire starry sky. The middle-aged man's lawful embodiment of heaven and earth instantly came to a halt in midair. It was as if it had been restrained by some terrifying invisible power. "No, no!" The middle-aged man screamed in horror. The huge law phenomenon kept struggling in the starry sky. crack, crack. With the continuous sound of bones breaking, the middle-aged man's law phenomenon shrank at a speed visible to the naked eye. 1,000,000 feet, 1,000,000 feet, 100,000 feet, 1,000 feet, 1,000 feet, 100 feet. Finally, the huge law phenomenon turned into a Xiao-Hei point in front of everyone's eyes and then collapsed in the starry sky. For a moment, the surrounding area was terrifyingly quiet. Everyone looked at this scene in horror. No one expected that the middle-aged man at the early stage of the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth would be killed so easily. Moreover, he was killed without a sound. So powerful. Where did this giant come from? Elder Anshi's pupils were locked as he stared at the giant. His heart was beating very fast. His cultivation was almost the same as that of the middle-aged man just now. If the latter could be killed silently, it meant that he would also face the same result if he faced the giant. Golden Lamp Dharmaraja, Sakyamuni, Blood Robe King, Shui Feng, and other experts all looked at the giant solemnly. Just now, the giant's means had also shocked them. They could not see through the giant's means. Moreover, the giant's strength was somewhat beyond their expectations. Is there anyone else who dares to challenge my authority? The giant's indifferent eyes glanced around and spoke slowly. His voice was like thunder, booming and exploding. For a moment, the scene fell into silence. Those who enter this door must give up everything. The giant looked around and said lightly. Then he sat cross-legged in the middle of the starry sky and closed his eyes slightly. The strange silence did not last long. Sakyamuni suddenly stepped forward and landed in front of the giant. The giant slowly opened his eyes and looked down at Sakyamuni. You want to enter this door? Yes. Sakyamuni said. Are you ready to give up? The giant said calmly. Sakyamuni said indifferently, I'm wholeheartedly pursuing the path of the strong. There's nothing I can't bear to part with. The giant looked at Sakyamuni in surprise. His eyes narrowed slightly, and there was surprise in the depths of his eyes. It discovered that the human cultivator in front of it had a heart as firm as iron. He was cold-blooded and emotionless, without any worries in his heart. You're right. In order to become stronger, you can do anything. In this world, there is nothing you can't give up. Go in. The giant said faintly, and the door in his chest slowly opened. Sakura took a step into it and disappeared. After Sakyamuni went in, more and more people entered the special door. Those cultivators who entered the door all gave up on their most important things on the spot. Some gave up on family, some gave up on friendship, and some gave up on love. Zhuan saw that many cultivators began to kill their own flesh and blood, Dao companions, and friends in order to enter the door. This is too much. This rule is simply devoid of humanity. Duan Jipeng said with a gloomy expression. Old Man Anshi, Li Yinglong, and the others also had ugly expressions, but they did not take a step in. Zhuan stood silently where he was, frowning but not moving at all. To his surprise, Zixuan also stood where she was, showing no signs of entering. Senior Z, you're not going in? Zhuan looked at Zixuan and asked indifferently. Zixuan's face was slightly pale as she said gloomily, the entry requirements are too rude. I don't want to go in. Zhuan was puzzled when he saw Zixuan's secretive behavior. Zixuan had always given him the impression of a ruthless and unscrupulous person. Would such a woman give up on the treasures and domain origin fragments in the ruins? This was absolutely impossible. Unless Zixuan had more important things than these, she would never give up such things. Guanihan is also going in. Old Man Anshi suddenly spoke, his gaze falling on Guanihan, who had finally moved. Your most important things are the three subordinates behind you. For countless years, they have fought for you, swore their lives to protect your throne. If you kill them with your own hands, you can enter the door. The giant glanced at Guanihan and spoke slowly, but his words made the faces of the Gold Lord, Fire Lord, and Water Lord turn pale. Nonsense. The three lords are my most important subordinates. They are like my life. Even if I die, I won't kill them. Guan Yihan roared angrily. The giant's lips curled into a subtle smile as he looked indifferently at Guan Yihan and did not refute. The Gold Lord, Water Lord, and Fire Lord were moved. They knelt on the ground and thanked Guan Yihan for cherishing their talents. However, the moment the three of them knelt, they felt a terrifying force spread out and drown them in an instant. The three lords spat out a mouthful of blood. Then, they saw Guan Yihan use his lawful embodiment of heaven and earth and mercilessly launch his most powerful attack at the three of them. The three sovereigns did not expect Guan Yihan to attack them. Therefore, before they could even use their lawful embodiment of heaven and earth, Guan Yihan's lawful embodiment of heaven and earth crushed them into pieces. Gold Lord, Water Lord, Fire Lord, don't blame me. I'm doing this for the good of the Void Yama realm. As long as we obtain the domain origin fragment, the Void Yama realm will become stronger. At that time, you three lords will go down in history as eternal heroes. Guan Yihan let out a sigh of relief. After she finished speaking, she stepped into the giant's chest. Guan Yihan is indeed a hypocrite. He usually looks noble and considerate, but when it comes to critical moments, he puts his own interests first. Zi Yixuan sneered. She seemed to have known Guan Yihan's true colors. Her beautiful eyes were full of disdain. Zhuowen's eyes flashed with coldness. He said in a low voice, Guan Yihan's disguise is so good. Even I was fooled by him. Unfortunately, the Gold Lord followed the wrong master. Zhuowen sighed in his heart. He had a good impression of the Gold Lord. The latter was forthright and straightforward. He was a sincere person. However, the Gold Lord did not expect that he would not die on the battlefield, but in the hands of his master. His death was worthless. After Guan Yihan entered, Dark Thunder King Gong Shuekuan also gave up one of his most important treasures and entered the door in front of the giant's chest. Soon, only the two teams, Zhuowen and Zixuan, were left. The other teams either entered the giant's door or were killed by the giant because they could not abandon their treasures. It's your turn. The giant's eyes fell on Zhuowen and Zixuan as he said calmly. Chapter 45-79. Must I give it up to enter the sect? Zi Yixian bit her cherry lips with her pearly white teeth and clenched her fists tightly. Her beautiful face was actually slightly flushed. The giant said expressionlessly, yes. If you can't give it up, then leave. Zi Yixuan's beautiful eyes flickered. She didn't say anything and let her subordinates enter the door first. She was still hesitant. What is the most important thing to you? Why are you so hesitant? Zhuowen saw Zi Yixuan's hesitation and couldn't help but ask. Chastity. The giant said indifferently. Zi Yixuan angrily looked at the giant, her face completely red. Zhuowen looked at Zi Yixuan strangely. The most important thing to this beautiful woman who was good at seduction was her chastity. Senior Zi, don't tell me you haven't even touched a man after cultivating for so long? Zhuowen asked strangely. Old man Anqi, Duan Jipeng and the others were also stunned. In their impression, Zi Yixuan should be a very open woman. They didn't expect Zi Yixuan to be so conservative. It's none of your business. Zi Yixuan angrily glared at Zhuowen. At this moment, she didn't have the arrogance and cunning from before. Instead, she was more like a shy young lady. Senior Zi, you have to give up your chastity to enter this door. Then you must have a man. I have many men here. Choose one. Zhuowen joked. Zi Yixuan was angry in her heart, but she smiled and looked at Zhuowen. Then I choose you. Why aren't you coming over? A night of romance is worth 1,000 gold. Zi Yixuan looked at Zhuowen with a smile. She hooked her finger and her whole body exuded a seductive temperament. Zhuowen was stunned for a moment, while Li Ying, Li Shuo and the others were completely immersed in Zi Yixuan's charm. Cough. This Zhuo prefers younger women. This Zhuo can't afford Senior Zi's luck with women. Zhuowen shrugged and refused straightforwardly. Zi Yixuan was furious and shouted, What do you mean? Are you saying I'm an old woman? Isn't that so? Zhuowen said indifferently. Zi Yixuan was so angry that he gnashed his teeth. A terrifying aura suddenly erupted as he stared at Zhuowen. She had been cultivating for so many years, and every male cultivator had fallen head over heels for her. Even the kings of other super realms had fawned over her. She had always been confident in her own charm, but now it had no effect on Zhuowen, which made her feel frustrated and angry. Zixuan, do you want to abandon this sect? The giant urged expressionlessly. Zixuan gritted her teeth and said coldly, Is there no other way? I can give up other things. The giant shook his head and said, It has to be the most important thing to you. If you don't want to give it up, then quickly leave. Zixuan was so angry that he stomped his feet, but he was afraid of the giant's strength and did not dare to be too presumptuous. Don't look at me, I'm really not interested in old women. When Zhuan saw Zixuan looking over again, he hurriedly waved his hand and said, Zhun, remember this. Zixuan gnashed her teeth in hatred. She glared fiercely at Zhuan and retreated from the central area where the giant was. What about you? The giant turned his head to look at Zhuan and asked indifferently, I will never give up the most important thing to me, even if I have to pay with my life. Zhuan said resolutely. As soon as he said this, the giant looked deeply at Zhuan, then turned to Elder Anshi, Duan Jipeng and the others. Elder Anshi, Duan Jipeng, and the others hesitated for a moment before shaking their heads. They all had a conscience in their hearts and were unwilling to give up the most important thing. They knew very well that once they gave it up, it would leave an inner demon in their hearts and would only harm themselves in the future. Zixuan looked at Zhuan in surprise and said, You worked so hard to get here, and you're giving up just like that? Who said I'm giving up? Zhuan said flatly. You can't even enter this door, so you can't enter the real ruins, and you still say you haven't given up. Zixuan sneered. The corners of Zhuan's mouth curled up slightly as his gaze fell on the giant in front of him. He said indifferently, Brother Ma, no need to pretend to be mysterious. Come out. I agree to your terms. Elder Anshi, Duan Jipeng, Zixuan, and the others all looked at Zhuan in confusion. They had no idea what Zhuan had said just now. This giant was mysterious and unfathomable. Did Zhuan know it? Brother Zhua, you are indeed a smart person. I like to negotiate terms with smart people like you. While everyone was puzzled, the giant in the center of the starry skies suddenly burst into laughter, and his voice became shrill. Then, everyone saw a fat figure appear on top of the giant's head. It was a chubby man dressed like a dog. He rolled down from the giant's body and landed precisely in front of Zhuan. Zhuan looked at the fat man in front of him and smiled, but he didn't take the initiative to greet him. He had dealt with Ma Yujie many times and knew that although the fat man looked harmless, he was actually very sinister. The moment he entered the starry sky, he suddenly received a message from Ma Yujie. It turned out that this guy had sneaked into the ruins early and used some unknown method to completely control the ruins. Ma Yujie had countless means, and even Zhuan had to admire him. Therefore, when Ma Yujie took control of the ruins in advance, Zhuan was not surprised. After taking control of the ruins, Ma Yujie constantly manipulated everything in the ruins and played with everyone who entered the ruins. Zhuan only knew about it after reading Massachusetts Yujie's message. What's going on? Elder Anshi, Zixuan, and the others stared at Ma Yujie in disbelief. They were really confused. After all this time, it seemed that all of this was the work of this fat man? Oh, it's like this. The owner of the ruins is called Tan Pinghong. I have his inheritance and everything else in my hands. You don't have to waste your efforts. Go back home and find your mothers. Ma Yujie waved his hand impatiently at everyone and said casually, What? That giant just now was a fake? Zixuan's beautiful eyes widened as she asked in disbelief. The giant is real. I condensed Tan Pinghong's lawful embodiment of heaven and earth origin to form a giant. It's comparable to an expert at the peak of the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth. It's very powerful, Ma Yujie said with a smile. Then what's with the giant's question? Zixuan asked. Oh, it's just a test that I added on a whim. I really didn't expect that there are so many idiots in this world who are actually willing to give up their most important things. How stupid! I'm dying of laughter. Ma Yujie held his stomach and laughed loudly. Damn fatty! I'm going to kill you! Zixuan was so angry that her pretty face turned pale. She flew over and a terrifying energy burst out, condensing into a 1,000,000 feet tall lawful embodiment of heaven and earth. Zi Yishuan's lawful embodiment of heaven and earth was a giant girl in a purple dress. This girl's face was covered by a purple veil and couldn't be seen clearly. At this moment, Zi Yishuan was flustered and exasperated. The question that she didn't want to expose the most was exposed so openly in front of everyone. This made Zi Yishuan so angry that she almost lost her mind. Chapter 4580. You little girl, why are you so violent? I was just joking. Why are you so angry? Ma Yujie stomped his feet and hurriedly slipped away, returning to the giant's head. Boom boom boom. Zi Yishuan's lawful embodiment of heaven and earth rushed over. His terrifying body seemed to cover the sky and the sun. He arrived in front of Ma Yujie in one step, and a huge palm suddenly blasted over. The giant sitting in the middle of the starry sky suddenly opened his eyes and similarly blasted out a palm. Boom! The two palms collided, and a terrifying series of explosions erupted. The giant was as immovable as a mountain, while Zi Yishuan's lawful embodiment of heaven and earth retreated several hundred steps, barely managing to stabilize his body. Little girl, what's there to be embarrassed about? I'm going to have a virgin older than you. What are you? You're not old at all. Besides, didn't that Zhuowen think you're old? I don't think you're old. Just follow me. Ma Yujie stood on the giant's head with his hands behind his back, looking like an enlightened expert. However, this fatty stared at Zi Yishuan without blinking. There were still traces of saliva at the corner of his mouth, ruining his image. Bastard! Zi Yishuan was so angry that he was trembling. He urged lawful embodiment of heaven and earth to charge at Zhuowen again. A terrifying power pervaded the entire starry sky like a storm. Boom boom boom. Unfortunately, the gap between Zi Yishuan and the giant was too great. He attacked repeatedly, and basically all of them were blocked by the giant. In the end, Zi Yishuan retreated in a sorry state and helplessly retracted his lawful embodiment of heaven and earth. He just glared fiercely at Ma Yujie. Ma Yujie, on the other hand, was very pleased with himself. His vulgar words kept coming out of his mouth, making Zi Yishuan so angry that she turned around and left. She really couldn't stand this fatty's words. His mouth was really too cheap. After Zi Yishuan left, Ma Yujie patted his clothes and came in front of Zhuowen with a smile. Finally angered this woman away. Brother Zhuo, we can talk about business now. Ma Yujie came over and put his arm around Zhuowen's shoulder, calling him brother very intimately. Zhuowen sneered in his heart, but his face also revealed a friendly smile. Looks like you purposely sent Zi Yishuan away? Zhuowen glanced at Zi Yishuan, who had disappeared, and said indifferently. Ma Yujie shrugged and said, After all, this is a conversation between you and me, and it's a matter of great importance. Outsiders naturally can't be around. Am I right? ZT0 as he spoke, Ma Yujie glanced at Old Man Anshi and the others who were not far away. Senior Anshi, Family Headley, Brother Duan, please excuse me for a moment. I have something important to discuss with Brother Ma. Jun looked at Old Man Anshi and the others and smiled. Old Man Anshi, Li Yinglong, and the others were all smart people. They knew what Zhuowen was implying. They smiled and stayed away from Zhuowen and Ma Yujie. After Old Man Anshi and the others had retreated far enough, Yun looked at Ma Yujie and said lightly, Brother Ma, you don't visit a temple without a cause. Why did you take the initiative to look for me this time? Ma Yujie grinned and said, Brother Zhuo, this time I look for you is a good thing. You came to the ruins for the resources of the ruins and the so-called domain origin fragment, right? Zhuowen looked at Ma Yujie indifferently. He neither admitted nor denied it. This ruins is completely under my control, including Tan Pinghong's resources, inheritance, and even the domain origin fragment. Ma Yujie said proudly. And then? Zhuowen said expressionlessly. The moment Ma Yujie appeared, Nguyen had already guessed, so he was not too surprised. I can give you half of the resources of the ruins, and I can also give you the inheritance. But I have a condition. Can you lend me the 2 primordial stones on you? Ma Yujie rubbed his hands and said. Nguyen narrowed his eyes and sneered, Lend to you? Brother Ma, do you think I'm the kind of person who looks stupid? How important were the primordial stones? What was the difference between lending them to Ma Yujie and giving them to him? Ma Yujie smiled embarrassedly and also felt that his request was a little too much. He continued, how about this? When the time comes, I'll need your primordial stones. You can do it with me. Do you want to use the primordial stones to enter the ancient star system? Zhuan looked deeply at Ma Yujie and asked with a slight smile. Ma Yujie's face changed slightly, and he immediately said solemnly, you're right. I do want to enter the ancient star system. It is said that there are 28 primordial gods in the ancient star system. I wonder if you are one of them? Zhuan said meaningfully. How do you know that there are 28 primordial gods in the ancient star system? Ma Yujie's face changed drastically, and he stared at Zhuan. It seems that I guessed correctly. You are indeed from the ancient star system. Why did you come to the lower realm? Zhuan's eyes lit up and asked. Ma Yujie's face was gloomy and he said, there are some things that you are not qualified to know. It will only be harmful to you if you know. Also, I am not one of the 28 primordial gods. Don't make wild guesses. Zhuan frowned slightly. From Ma Yujie's tone, he could feel that the latter was not lying. It seemed that he had guessed wrong. The ancient star system is still too far away from me. I know nothing about it. What is there? Zhuan secretly guessed in his heart. The primordial stones are in my hands. If you want to enter the ancient star system, you must bring me in with you. There are some things that even if you don't say, I will know in the future. Zhuan said lightly. Ma Yujie sighed softly and said, you are right, but I still can't say it now. When I find the last primordial stone and enter the ancient star system, you will know the truth. Zhuan's gaze was sharp as he looked deeply at Ma Yujie, but he did not continue to ask. He knew that with Ma Yujie's character, even if he forcefully forced, the latter would never say if he did not say. The last primordial stone, I don't even have any clues. Wait until I find it, who knows how long it will take. Zhuan said with a faint smile. But Ma Yujie revealed a mysterious smile and said, the last primordial stone won't be too late. Next, you just have to wait for my news. Zhuan raised his eyebrows. It seemed like this fatty had some clues. Zhuan did not ask any more, but said coolly, your conditions are not enough. I can't agree. The mysterious smile on Ma Yujie's face immediately froze. He stomped his feet and pointed at Zhuan as he said, don't go too far. How is the conditions I gave you not enough? Of course it's not enough. Half of the resources in this ruin is too little. I need all of the resources. Also, that realm source fragment is useless to you too. Just give it to me too. If you can't do these, then forget it. Zhuan said coolly. What? Zhuan, you are reaching for a yard after taking an inch. Ma Yujie said in exasperation. Then there's nothing to talk about. Either way, the resources in this ruin aren't particularly important to me, and entering the ancient star system or not doesn't affect me even more. It doesn't matter if you don't talk about it. Zhuan said with a cold smile. In an instant, Ma Yujie's face was as black as charcoal, the corners of his mouth twitching nonstop. Chapter 4581. After considering for a long time, Ma Yujie said with a black face, it's impossible to give all the resources of the ruins. I can only say 2/3. This is my bottom line. That realm source fragment can also be given. If you still don't agree, then I can only. Let's go our separate ways. But I agree. Zhuan immediately agreed. Ma Yujie looked at the Zhuan who agreed readily in shock, and his heart immediately sank. He knew that he fell into Zhuan's trap. This guy's initial price in his heart was 2/3 of the resources of the ruins. There was even a possibility that half would reach the mark. It was just that this guy deliberately reported all the resources, waiting for him, Ma Yujie, to fall into the trap. Yuan. Ma Yujie gnashed his teeth in hatred. Brother Ma, I know that you're a person of integrity. You definitely have to honor the words you said. If you go back on your word, isn't that slapping your own face? Zhuan curled his lips and said, ruthless. Ma Yujie snorted coldly and could only suffer in silence. Oh right, where did that group of people enter? Zhuowen suddenly asked. Ma Yujie glanced at the giant behind him, the corners of his mouth revealing a sly smile, and said, Hehe, of course it's the most dangerous place in the Tanprenghong ruins. That bunch of fools still thought that they entered the real ruins. Little do they know that there's nothing inside. Zhuan gave Ma Yujie a glance, observing a moment of silence for Golden Lamp Dharmaraja, Sakyamuni, and the rest in his heart. This was completely fooled by Ma Yujie. Give me the things I want. In order to set your mind at ease, I can swear a heavenly Tao oath. Zhuan said coolly. Ma Yujie waved his hand and said, Forget about the heavenly Tao oath. I've dealt with you many times too. Although you're very cunning, you're still very trustworthy. I can still trust you on this. Finished talking, Ma Yujie took out a transparent bead and threw it to Zhun. This bead was refined by me from Tanprenghong's storage world. Inside is all of Tanprenghong's wealth in this lifetime. I took 1/3 of it. Ma Yujie continued, Oh right, that realm source fragment is also inside. Even if you don't recognize that thing, you can recognize it at first glance. Zhuan took the bead and poured his divine sense into it. He immediately discovered a new world. This bead was like a small world with a lot of space inside. He saw all kinds of divine weapons, divine medicines, divine pills, and so on piled up like mountains. They were all categorized into different categories. So many resources. Zhuan was shocked by the huge amount of resources in the world of the pearl. With these resources, the Kanglan domain behind him would develop even faster. In the center of the bead world, he saw a huge shard of a shining sphere. This spherical fragment was around 3 kilometers in size, and its surface was covered in various complicated talisman markings and laws, causing it to seem extremely extraordinary. Looks like this is the realm's origin fragment. Zhuan looked at the spherical fragment with bright eyes and said excitedly. When Zhuowen's divine sense came into contact with the realm's origin fragment, his pupils shrank. The energy in the realm's origin fragment was like a spring rain that constantly nourished his spirit, causing it to grow a lot stronger. The realm's origin fragment has many uses. It can nourish the spirit and also be used for cultivation, but these are not its greatest use. Its greatest use is to upgrade the realm level. Ma Yujie stood in front of Zhuan, arms crossed, and said indifferently. After Zhuan withdrew his divine sense, he looked at Ma Yujie and said with a smile, I'm very satisfied this time, thank you. With our relationship, we still need to rely on Brother Zhua in the future. Ma Yujie said with a mischievous smile. Zhuan nodded, his eyes flashing. Do you know the ancient Heavenly Tao Academy? Ma Yujie's smile froze slightly. Ancient Heavenly Tao Academy? I seem to have heard of it. It is said to be the most powerful force in the 100 domains outside the domain. I once heard that the establishment of the ancient Heavenly Tao Academy originated from an existence that fell from the ancient stars. Do you know about it? Zhuowen said with a smile. Ma Yujie smiled embarrassedly and said, I haven't heard of it. I think it should be some kind of fabricated rumor. After all, these forces want to increase their prestige and reputation, so they must fabricate some grand origin stories. Maybe. Zhuan did not comment and did not continue to talk about this topic. By the way, Brother Zhua seems to have a grudge against the naughty Shiva, right? Ma Yujie suddenly changed the topic. Zhuowen said indifferently, You can say that there is a little conflict. Ma Yujie smiled slyly and waved his sleeve. An invisible ripple appeared in front of them. An image appeared in the ripple, and it showed Sakyamuni, Ghost Child, and the other 3. At this moment, the 4 of them were in an area of mountains. The mountains in this area were very strange. They were 7-colored, as if they were made up of rainbows. Brother Zhua, let me help you punish Sakyamuni. What do you think? Ma Yujie said with a smile. Although the fat man used a question, his tone was not one of inquiry at all. Instead, it was full of certainty. Zhuan did not even say anything. Ma Yujie entered the giant and began to activate some of the hidden mechanisms in the world. The 7-colored mountain range. Sakyamuni, Ghost Child, and the other 3 stopped in a valley. Strangely, the plants growing in the valley also emitted seven-colored light. It was very strange. This seven-colored world is simply endless, and it is as poor as a church mouse. Is this really the relic of the Almighty from the Abyss domain? Ghost Child looked around and saw the endless seven-colored mountain range. His face was extremely gloomy. After they entered this world, they appeared in the seven-colored mountain range. No matter which direction they flew in, no matter how long they flew, they could not get out of the seven-colored mountain range. They were like headless flies, trapped in the maze of the seven-colored mountain range, and they could not get out at all. There is definitely something wrong here. Sakyamuni's eyes became gloomy. The more he searched the area, the more doubts in his heart grew. Boom, boom, boom. Suddenly, the ground shook violently. It was as if an unprecedented earthquake had occurred in the entire seven-colored mountain range. What's going on? Ghost Child and the others immediately stood up in shock. Then, they were shocked to find that the countless seven-colored mountains around them seemed to come alive, and they grew seven-colored hands and feet. Not only that, but a huge seven-colored head also grew out of the seven-colored mountain range. The rainbow-colored mountains stood up and transformed into incomparably huge rainbow-colored giants. They rushed towards Sakura, Ghost Child, and the others one after another. These mountains are all alive? Su Jiang and Mi Haomiao were shocked. They could not help but turn around and run. Sakyamune and Ghost Child did not plan to fight the seven-colored giants head-on after sensing the terrifying aura from them. They followed behind Su Jing and Mi Haomiao and escaped. However, not long after Su Jing and Mi Haomiao escaped, they stopped and looked ahead with pale faces. At the very front, even more seven-colored giants were rushing over. They were like a thick seven-colored wall that was pushing forward. At the same time, there were many seven-colored giants rushing toward them from their left, right, and back. In other words, Sakura and the rest were surrounded by seven-colored giants from all directions, practically encircling them until not even a drop of water could trickle through. Chapter 4582. Boom. The rainbow giant at the front was the first to arrive. Its huge fist came crashing down, completely enveloping Sakyamune and the other three. The Ghost Child's face darkened. With a wave of his sleeve, a terrifying energy shot out and froze the rainbow giant's fist. Moreover, the frost spread at an extremely fast speed, instantly turning the incomparably huge seven-colored giant into an ice giant. Kacha! The Ghost Child flicked his finger, and a terrifying finger force pierced through the air and blasted into the ice giant. Instantly, the ice giant shattered into dust. Be careful! These rainbow giants are all halfway to the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth. The Ghost Child said in a low voice. Sakyamune's face darkened, especially when he saw the rainbow giants so densely packed that they almost covered the entire area. No matter how strong Sakyamune and the Ghost Child were, facing so many rainbow giants, they would be in grave danger. Boom boom boom. The rainbow giants would not give Sakyamune and the Ghost Child any chance to breathe. Like a flood of colors, they pushed forward and drowned the Ghost Child, Sakyamune, and the others. The Ghost Child, Sakyamune, Su Jing, and Mi Haomiao immediately activated their lawful embodiments of heaven and earth. For gigantic lawful embodiments of heaven and earth stood between the heavens and the earth. They were mighty and boundless. Although the rainbow giants were huge, they were only a few 100,000 feet tall. There was still a gap between them and the lawful embodiments of heaven and earth. Bang bang bang. The Ghost Child's lawful embodiment of heaven and earth stomped on the ground, and a terrifying frost energy spread out. The ground within 100 million miles was frozen into a terrifying frost. Most of the rainbow giants in this area were frozen into ice sculptures. They could not move at all. Su Jing Mi Haomiao, destroy these ice sculptures. Otherwise, these rainbow giants will break free from the frost and attack again. The Ghost Child commanded Su Jing and Mi Haomiao with a serious gaze. He then said to Sakyamune, Shun, go and stop the other rainbow giants outside the range of the frost. Sakyamune nodded. He took a step forward and instantly appeared outside the range of the frost. There were even more seven-colored giants outside, charging tirelessly, not fearing death at all. Sakyamuni took a deep breath and rushed forward, his body erupting with a blazing golden light. In an instant, Sakyamuni's lawful embodiment of heaven and earth rushed into the rainbow giant. Then, endless golden light shone for millions of feet and turned into countless blazing golden arrows that fell from the sky. Bang bang bang! Under the barrage of countless golden arrows, the rainbow-colored giants came to a halt and began to retreat. Meanwhile, the seven-colored giant at the front had already been riddled with holes by the golden arrows. Indra's celestial phenomenon of heaven and earth seemed to have entered a realm where no one could stop him. His entire body emitted a terrifying golden light, and with a single punch, dozens of seven-colored giants were sent flying high into the sky before being thrown far away. On the other side, Su Jiang and Mi Haomiao were very efficient. After completely shattering the ice sculptures in the range of the frost, the ghost child stepped forward to support Sakyamuni. Instantly, the seven-colored giant in the area where Sakura was also frozen into ice sculptures. Just like that, the four of them cooperated very well. In an instant, they had blocked the terrifying attacks of the rainbow giants. However, there were just too many rainbow giants. They kept coming from all directions as if there was no end to them. They could not kill them all. Just how many rainbow giants are there? Why do I feel like there's no end to them? Su Jing frowned, her voice filled with fear. Sakyamuni and the ghost child's hearts sank. They also felt that something was wrong. Logically speaking, they had killed at least hundreds of thousands of rainbow giants. Instead of killing them all, there were more and more of them. This was just too strange. I'm afraid we've fallen into some kind of illusion formation. Sakyamuni sent a rainbow giant flying with a punch. His eyes were gloomy. Illusion formation? If it's an illusion formation, then this illusion formation is too advanced. We didn't even notice it, the ghost child said in a low voice. Sakyamuni took a deep breath. With a wave of his sleeve, he took out the 100 Ghosts portrait again. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Countless demons and monsters rushed out of the 100 Ghosts portrait and began to wreak havoc in this world. Although I don't understand formations, I know that the only way to break an illusion formation is to use illusions. It's time for the 100 Ghosts portrait to be put to use. Sakyamuni said coldly. Countless phantoms and evil spirits instantly filled up the entire space, causing it to darken instantly. The rainbow giants around them became illusory under the attacks of the evil spirits. In the end, they disappeared before everyone's eyes. In less than 10 breaths of time, the endless rainbow giants had all disappeared. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Sakyamuni made a grabbing motion with his right hand. The 100 Ghosts portrait was caught in his hand, and the evil spirits returned to the 100 Ghosts portrait unwillingly. Ghost Child looked around, and only then did he realize that he was still surrounded by endless mountain ranges. However, the mountains that appeared before them were no longer colorful. Instead, they were normal green and lush. It seems like we've fallen into an illusion when we first entered, Sakyamuni said calmly. As expected of Master Ji Yuanxing's disciple, Nephew Zhuoan is really powerful. Su Jiang and Mi Haomiao quickly praised Zhuoan. Sakura, on the other hand, was expressionless. His gaze passed through the endless mountains and looked at the dusky horizon. His heart was still heavy. He had a feeling that this place was very strange. Perhaps everything was not as simple as it seemed. There are huge palaces over there. Suddenly, Su Jiang pointed to the northwest. There, at the end of the mountains, was a huge plain. XW8 at the end of the plain, there were endless shadows of palaces. They were densely packed together, as if there was a vast country there. Could that be the real ruins? Mi Haomiao asked excitedly. Let's go. Let's go and take a look. The ghost child made a prompt decision. He was also a little excited. If the palaces in the distance were really the ruins, they would really be rich. Only Sakyamuni frowned. He felt that the palaces in the distance had appeared too abruptly. It was too much of a coincidence for them to appear right after they had escaped. However, he could not figure out what was wrong. Therefore, he could only follow the ghost child and the others to the northwest. Ha! These 4 fools are about to fall into the second trap that I've carefully designed for them. In the starry sky, Mayuja sat on the giant's head. He looked at the movements of Sakyamune and the others on the huge screen and could not help but laugh loudly. Juon stood on the other side with a look of pity in his eyes. It seemed that Mayuja wanted to completely destroy Sakyamune and the others. Old Man Anshi, Duan Jipeng, and the others were silent. They did not dare to say a word and only looked at Mayuja in fear. They all felt that this fatty in front of them was very dangerous. It was better to stay away from him. Chapter 4583. When Sakyamune's group of 4 arrived at the palace complex at the northwest end, they saw rows upon rows of magnificent palaces surrounded by clouds. It was like a fairyland. What a magnificent palace complex! Su Jing and Mi Haomiao's eyes lit up with excitement. The palaces in front of them were too magnificent. Even the king of hell's palaces were not as luxurious as this. Let's go in and take a look. Ghost Child's eyes also lit up. He had never seen such a luxurious palace before. The palaces exuded a rich sense of luxury from the beginning to the end, which made Ghost Child somewhat believe that the palaces in front of them might contain the inheritance of that Almighty. Only Sakyamune's face was gloomy. He felt that something was wrong. From the beginning until now, he felt like he was being controlled by someone. This feeling made him very uncomfortable. Wow, there are so many treasures here. There are so many divine medicines, divine pills, and divine weapons at the 4th sky of Eternal Realm. As soon as Su Jing entered one of the palaces, she was shocked by the piles of divine medicines and divine pills inside. Mi Haomiao also entered another palace and saw many treasures that they had never seen before. In an instant, their eyes turned crimson red as greed took over their minds. Ghost Child was also shocked by the many treasures in front of him. Even though he was one of the 3 kings of the Deviant Ghost clan, he had never seen so many treasures before. This is indeed the place where that Almighty hid his treasures. We're really rich. Ghost Child laughed loudly. Only Sakyamune felt uneasy. He advised, Senior Ghost Child, something is wrong here. Everything is too coincidental. Ghost Child waved his hand and said, What is wrong? Look at these divine medicines, divine pills, and divine weapons. They are all genuine. Sakyamuni wanted to persuade him, but Ghost Child's eyes were completely red. He began to crazily plunder the resources in the palaces. Su Jing and Mi Haomiao were also completely crazy. They plundered the resources in the palaces without any sense of reason. Sakyamuni frowned. He walked slowly in the palaces. The deeper he went, the stranger he felt. This was because he found that there were no restrictions set up in the palaces. The palaces were unobstructed. This did not make any sense. The master of the ruins was a true mighty figure of the Abyss realm. His inheritance must be full of traps. How could he open the door so openly and let them, the latecomers, plunder at will? Not good. There is definitely something wrong. Sakyamuni's expression changed. He leaped out of the palaces, wanting to leave the palaces. The moment he leaped, a sinister laughter came from the palaces. As soon as the laughter appeared, an extremely terrifying energy came from the entire palace complex. This energy seemed to have an earth-shattering power. It exploded in an instant and enveloped the entire palaces. Sakyamuni's expression changed. His body emitted a blazing golden light. His speed increased by several times, and he left the palaces by a hair's breadth. Ghost Child, Su Jing, and Mi Haomiao were too deep in the palaces. By the time they realized something was wrong, it was already too late. At the instant when the entire palace complex exploded, the 3 of them let out a furious bellow and activated their lawful embodiment of heaven and earth to protect themselves. Sakyamune landed on the peak of a mountain. He stared at the explosions in front of him. His expression was extremely ugly. The palace's explosions were too terrifying. The earth and sky shook violently as if they were about to collapse. Damn it! Who is causing trouble? Di Shirtian gnashed his teeth and couldn't help but growl in a low voice. The palace's explosions were too terrifying. Even he would be severely injured by such a terrifying explosion. The explosions lasted for an unknown amount of time. Finally, it gradually calmed down. Sakyamuni looked around and realized that the palaces in front of him were gone. His surroundings were a wasteland. At this moment, the wasteland had been blasted into a huge abyss. Smoke rose into the air, forming a huge mushroom cloud. Ghost Child Sr. Sakyamuni took a step forward and rushed into the abyss. Soon he found Ghost Child thousands of feet below the abyss. At this moment, Ghost Child was in a sorry state. His clothes were tattered and his hair was disheveled. More seriously, his right arm was completely charred black. Fresh blood kept flowing out. Pfft. Ghost Child spat out a mouthful of blood. He forced his eyes open and saw Sakyamuni in front of him. Damn it. What is going on? The palaces? Ghost Child's expression was gloomy. He activated his surging divine power and began to heal his terrifying injuries. Although he looked miserable, most of his injuries were external injuries. It was not difficult for him to heal them. After all, Ghost Child was very powerful. His cultivation had reached the late stage of lawful embodiment of heaven and earth. Where are Su Jing and Mi Hao Miao? Ghost Child asked as he recovered from his injuries. Ghost Child Sr., you go up first. I'll go down and look for them. Sakyamuni said and quickly fell into the abyss. Su Jing and Mi Hao Miao were the weakest. They were only at the early stage of lawful embodiment of heaven and earth. Sakyamuni felt that the two of them had most likely perished in this explosion. After falling for about half an incense stick's worth of time, Indra found the two people in a cave of a stronghold. Su Jing and Mi Hao Miao's limbs had exploded. Their auras were weak. They were curled up in the cave, twitching non-stop. Sakyamuni's gaze froze. He could clearly feel that their auras were rapidly dissipating. Obviously, their injuries were too severe. They had almost died on the spot. Fortunately, the two of you are still breathing. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to save you. Sakyamuni frowned. He took out 2 golden pills and stuffed them into their mouths. Not long after, their dissipated auras stabilized, and their vitality gradually recovered. However, the two of them were still unconscious. Sakyamuni waved his sleeves and kept the two of them in his lawful embodiment of heaven and earth world. He stepped out of the cave and flew toward the abyss. However, just as he flew out, he immediately felt that something was wrong. In the depths of the abyss, a terrifying explosion suddenly erupted. Then, a terrifying wave of heat quickly swept through the entire space. Sakyamuni looked down. His pupils constricted as he saw the rolling lava turn into a giant dragon and rush toward him. Its speed was so fast that it made him tremble with fear. Sakyamuni didn't dare to stay for long. Golden light burst out from his body. His golden hair fluttered as he turned into a golden stream of light and fled. However, the speed of the lava exceeded Sakyamuni's expectations. The moment he was about to fly out of the abyss, the terrifying lava swallowed him whole. Chapter 4584. Outside the abyss, on a mountain range, the ghost child was awkwardly leaning against a huge rock at the top of the mountain. When Sakyamuni appeared, he was pleasantly surprised, but then his expression changed drastically. That was because the magma that rushed out of the abyss swallowed Sakyamuni whole. Moreover, the ghost child also found that another magma seemed to have a mind of its own and was flying toward him. Damn it! The ghost child cursed and immediately began to escape. But the magma instantly collapsed, and a golden light jumped out. Sakyamuni stepped out with a gloomy face. The magma that was originally chasing after the ghost child seemed to have realized that Sakyamuni was out of danger and suddenly turned around to attack Sakyamuni. Sakyamuni's eyes were cold. He grasped the void with his right hand, and countless golden lights condensed in his palm, forming a huge golden halberd. But he suddenly threw out the halberd, and the huge magma collapsed again. It's too strange. It's really too strange. This world seems to be targeting us. After Sakyamuni broke out of the magma, the ghost child quickly came to his side. He muttered to himself, his eyes full of anger. Sakyamuni took a deep breath and said, "Ghost Child Sr., I'm afraid we've been deceived by the starry sky giant. This is not the place where the ruins are at all. It's more likely to be a dangerous trap. The ghost child narrowed his eyes. He was not a fool. After experiencing these two strange places, he also felt that he had been deceived. Now that we've entered this world, we don't know how to get out. Even if we know that we've been deceived, there's nothing we can do. The ghost child sighed softly. Sakyamuni narrowed his eyes and suddenly transmitted his voice. That's not necessarily true. If it's just our strength, we may not be able to leave this world. But don't forget, there are other strong people in this world, such as the Golden Lamp King and the Blood-Robed King. The ghost child looked around. He understood that Sakyamuni was afraid that their conversation would be overheard by the starry sky giant that controlled this world. The ghost child also transmitted his voice to him. Do you mean that we're going to gather everyone's strength and leave this world together? The ghost child replied. No. If this world is really controlled, we won't succeed no matter how hard we try to find the exit, because the location of the exit will be controlled. Sakyamuni said. What do you mean? The ghost child asked in surprise. Destroy this world. Sakra's gaze was cold. Destroy this world? The ghost child was shocked. Yes, if we gather the strength of all the experts who have entered the ruins this time, then we have the strength to destroy an expert at the pinnacle of the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth. This power was enough to destroy this world. And if we fight on our own, we'll be defeated one by one. The depths of D. Shirtion's eyes flashed with the light of wisdom. The ghost child's eyes brightened and said, as expected of nephew Shirtion, this is a wonderful idea. I'll contact the Golden Lamp King and the Blood-Robed King. As the ghost child was about to take out the communication jade charm, Sakyamuni stopped him. What's wrong? The ghost child asked in confusion. Don't be too obvious when you contact them. We must not let the manipulator know our intentions. Sakyamuni said lightly. The ghost child was shocked. He put down the communication jade charm that he was about to pick up and landed on a mountain with a natural expression. Then he secretly used the communication jade charm to send a message to all the strong people he knew. In every corner of this world, the Golden Lamp King, the Blood-Robed King, the Virtual Hell King, and all the other strong people received the ghost child's message. After reading the ghost child's message, all the strong people were shocked. Then, they all tacitly gathered at the location sent by the ghost child. In the starry sky. Zhuan looked at the screen silently. Suddenly, his eyes narrowed and said, Brother Ma, it seems that Sakyamuni and the others have gathered everyone and are ready to attack your world. Ma Yujie also saw that more and more strong people were gathering around the mountain where Sakyamuni was. I think your world is still very strong. It won't be so easy to be broken through. Zhuan joked. Ma Yujie wiped the cold sweat on his forehead guiltily and said, Probably. Zhuan frowned and said, What do you mean, probably? Are you controlling this world? Hee, I put it together at the last minute. I also modified it. I'm afraid the world barrier is not that strong. Ma Yujie laughed awkwardly. What? That is to say, if these people join forces and attack the spatial barrier of this world together, your world will immediately collapse? Zhuowen had a bad premonition. In theories, Ma Yujie did not dare to look at Zhuan. Get me out of here. Zhuan said seriously when he saw that Sakyamuni, Golden Lamp King, and the others had reached an agreement and began to gather their strongest forces. If Sakyamuni, Golden Lamp King, and the others broke through the world and appeared in this starry sky, they would definitely attack him and Ma Yujie. If so many strong people attacked him at the same time, Zhuan felt that it would be difficult. Come with me. Ma Yujie also felt that he had gone too far. He jumped off the giant's head and fled in a certain direction in the starry sky. Zhuowen, Old Man Anshi, and the others followed closely behind. After a while, Ma Yujie, Don, and the others arrived at the edge of the starry sky. Ma Yujie punched the edge of the starry sky, and then the starry sky in front of him shattered and a huge vortex appeared. This is the exit. Before Ma Yujie finished speaking, an earth-shattering explosion came from the center of the starry sky. Zhuowen and Ma Yujie subconsciously raised their heads to look. Then, they saw that the starry sky giant sitting in the middle of the starry sky was suddenly covered in cracks. Then, it completely exploded. A blazing white light spread out and filled the entire starry sky, dyeing it white. At the same time, in the white light, several figures flew out. They were led by Sakyamuni, Golden Lamp King, Blood Robe King, Xue Feng, and the others. As soon as Sakyamuni came out, he immediately spread out his powerful divine sense and scanned the entire starry sky. Finally, it fell on the starry sky where Jun, Mayujie, and the others were. Yun, is this really your doing? Sakyamuni's eyes turned cold, and he immediately suppressed his anger and shouted. He never thought that Jun was behind all this. Did that mean that the relic of the Abyss Realm's Almighty had been taken away by Jun? In an instant, Golden Lamp King, Blood Robe King, and countless other experts all stared at Jun. Zhuowen's scalp went numb, and he quickly denied, "The matter of the starry sky giant has nothing to do with me. It's all this fatty's doing. He tricked you in. You traitor, you betrayed me so quickly." Mayujie was flustered and exasperated, especially when he felt a terrifying killing intent fall on him. His scalp went numb, and he cursed Zhuowen's entire family. "It's this fatty." Sakyamuni's eyes were like torches, staring at Jun, and his heart was full of anger. He was very aggrieved in the inner world of the starry sky giant, and it turned out that everything was this fatty's doing. "Don't look at me like that, I'm just joking with you. You're all big shots, so you can take this kind of joke, right?" Mayujie smiled embarrassedly. But after feeling the crowd's killing intent become more and more intense, Mayujie immediately scolded Jun. "Aren't you all fighting for the domain origin fragment? That thing is with Jun, and most of the resources here are with him. You have to find him." Mayujie quickly pointed at Jun. In an instant, everyone's killing intent condensed on Jun. Chapter 4585. Zhuowen's pupils shrank as he cursed Mayujie in his heart. This damned fatty actually dared to say such a thing. From now on, he would never have a day of peace. "Yun, hand over the domain origin fragment and all the resources in the relic, and I'll leave you with a whole corpse," Sakyamuni said calmly. Mayujie hurriedly said, "There's nothing for me to do here. If there's nothing else, I'll leave first." "Who allowed you to leave? You've tricked us so badly. Now, take your own life to atone for your sins," Sakyamuni said coldly. Mayujie grinned and said, "If this fat lord wants to leave, you can't stop me even if you want to." After saying that, Mayujie shrank his neck and immediately entered the vortex. However, as soon as he stepped into the whirlpool, a strange force suddenly surged and restrained Mayujie's body like a wave. Mayujie's body trembled, and he stiffened on the spot, not moving at all. Zhuowen's pupils shrank slightly. He could feel a vast, boundless wave of energy instantly enveloping his surroundings, like countless ropes restraining him. This is a soul. Only then did Zhuowen notice that he, Mayujie, and the others were surrounded by endless shadows at some point. These shadows were encircled by illusory chains. At this moment, the shadows were constantly encircling them, wrapping the chains around their bodies. "A group of bastards, you've tricked us so badly. Especially you, fatty, how dare you lie to me? You deserve to die." Blood Robe King Xiefeng gently waved his slender fingers. The chains around Zhuowen, Mayujie, and the others were getting closer and closer, and there was a terrifying howl in their ears. "It's not an evil spirit or a ghost, but a pure soul?" Zhuowen narrowed his eyes and immediately perceived the huge difference between the surrounding shadows and evil spirits. It seemed that Blood Robe King Xiefeng was an expert in controlling souls. Boom, boom, boom. At the same time, Jin Deng threw out the golden lamp in his right hand without saying a word. A dazzling golden lamp shot out and instantly expanded to several hundred feet in size, hovering above Zhuowen and the others. The dim yellow light shone down, forming a golden cage, trapping Zhuowen and the others inside. "You can't escape. Fatty, hand over your life. And hand over all the treasures in the ruins." Golden Lamp Dharmaraja said calmly. Mayujie's lips curled into a cold smile. "You want to trap me with this? What a joke." After saying that, Ma Yujia took out a bronze mirror from his chest and took it out. He pointed the bronze mirror at the golden lamp above his head. Strangely, the golden lamp that was originally releasing a blazing light suddenly went out. Ma Yujia shone the light on the surrounding shadows again. The surrounding shadows let out shrill screams and retreated. Then, under the dumbfounded gazes of the crowd, Ma Yujia moved his fat body into the whirlpool and disappeared. Zhuowen's reaction was also extremely fast. He circulated the primordial grandmist chant at high speed, and the surrounding shadows retreated as if they had met their natural enemy. "Let's go!" Zhuowen growled and rushed into the whirlpool with Elder Anxi, Li Yinglong, and the others. "Chase!" Sakyamuni's face was gloomy. He turned into a stream of light and chased after them. Golden Lamp Dharmaraja, Blood Robe King, Void Hades, and the others all had gloomy faces and chased after them. They never would have thought that the effort they put in to enter this place would turn out to be for naught. Furthermore, they had been tricked by a fatty. "Brother Guan, this Zhuowen has helped you a lot. Do you still plan to go after him?" Dark Thunder King Gong Shuekuan glanced at Guan Yihan, who was not far away, and asked lightly. Guan Yihan snorted and said, "Zhuo Xiaoyu and I are just partners. My goal has always been the domain origin fragment. If anyone tries to snatch it from me, I won't be polite, no matter who it is." After saying that, Guan Yihan rushed into the whirlpool. Gong Shuekuan sneered and did not say anything, but followed closely behind him. The huge fortress was still lying in the middle of the bitter sea. Ma Yujia, Zhuowen, and the others left through the fortress gate. "Brother Zhuo, I'll take my leave first. I'll contact you when I leave this ruin," Ma Yujia said to Zhuowen without looking back. Then he took out a black awning boat, put on a straw raincoat and a bamboo hat, and flew in a certain direction of the bitter sea. "This damn fatty," Zhuowen cursed in his heart. He also took out a black awning boat and quickly chose a direction to flee in. When Ma Yujia and Zhuowen had just left, Golden Lamp Dharmaraja, Sakyamuni, and the others came out one after another. They saw Ma Yujia and Zhuowen driving the black awning boats in different directions, and their eyes narrowed dangerously. The black awning boats are too fast. It's impossible to catch up with them with our method. Blood Robe King, summon your ferryman, Golden Lamp Dharmaraja said in a low voice. Xue Feng had already contacted the ferryman without Golden Lamp Dharmaraja's order. After a while, a black awning boat flew over and stopped below. "Catch up with the black awning boat in front." As soon as Xue Feng got on the boat, he pointed in the direction of Zhuowen's escape and said in a low voice. Golden Lamp Dharmaraja, Sakyamuni, Guan Yihan, and the others also entered Xue Feng's black awning boat. Xue Feng said with a gloomy face. "Blood Robe King, don't worry. We'll pay the fare separately, and we'll definitely satisfy you. Now, it's more important to catch up with Yuan," Golden Lamp Dharmaraja said lightly. Blood Robe King saw Golden Lamp Dharmaraja, Sakyamuni, Ghost Child, and the other experts looking at him covetously, and his heart skipped a beat. Even though he was arrogant and unruly, he was not a fool. It was extremely unwise to offend so many experts at once. Moreover, it was more important to catch up with Zhuowen now. He did not have time to waste on this meaningless argument. After Blood Robe King reluctantly handed over many souls, the ferryman laughed and held the bamboo pole with both hands, pushing it violently in the sea of bitterness. Immediately, the black awning boat shot out like an arrow leaving a bow, breaking through the large waves. Its speed was so fast that it caused one to be shocked. He's a real ferryman indeed. The speed of controlling the black awning boat is even faster than Zhuowen's. Golden Lamp Dharmaraja could not help but sigh secretly. He could clearly see that the black awning boat he was on was slowly closing in on Zhuowen's boat, which was constantly escaping ahead. Is no one going to care about that damn fatty? He's screwed us over. Xue Feng said with a gloomy face. Sakyamuni said coldly, "Be that as it may, Blood Robe King, why don't you go after that fatty and teach him a lesson?" Golden Lamp Dharmaraja, Guan Yihan, and the others all looked at Blood Robe King. The latter narrowed his eyes and said lightly, "There's plenty of time to teach that fatty a lesson. It's more important to catch up with Yun." Everyone sneered inwardly. They were not fools. Naturally, they knew that the domain origin fragments and relics were more important. Since Yuan had all of these, how could they give up such a great opportunity to catch up with Ma Yujie, who was of no importance to them? Chapter 4586. Zhuo Xiaoyu, they are coming towards us. Inside the black awning boat, Old Man Anshi looked back and saw the King of Bloody Robes and the others flying towards them. His pupils shrank as he exclaimed, "Their boat is so fast. They are catching up." Li Yinglong said worriedly. Zhuowen, wearing a straw raincoat and a bamboo hat, stood at the stern and controlled the boat. He naturally noticed the approaching King of Bloody Robes and the others, but he turned a deaf ear to them. Instead, he pushed the bamboo pole and forcibly increased the speed of the boat. However, Yuan was not a real ferryman, and he had only been in contact with the boat for a short time. Therefore, the speed of his boat was far slower than that of the real ferryman. "We are about to reach the edge of the cliff," Zhuowen suddenly said in a low voice. Old Man Anshi and the others quickly looked ahead and saw the shadow of a huge cliff. "Faster, the King of Bloody Robes and the others will catch up soon." Old Man Anshi's pupils shrank into needles as he whispered. Zhuowen looked calm. His divine sense naturally saw that the boat behind them was only a few dozen miles away. The distance was too close. When they were only a few thousand meters away from the cliff, the boat behind them was only a few hundred meters away. The two were very close. "Jun, stop right now or die," Sakyamuni shouted. He stood up straight and suddenly blasted out his right palm. A blazing golden light rushed into the sky. A huge golden handprint fell down like a mountain, smashing ruthlessly onto the black awning ship Zhuowen was on. Bang, bang, bang. When the golden handprint landed on the black awning ship, dense array patterns appeared on the surface of the ship. He was actually able to completely block the terrifying golden palm print. A formation of the fourth heaven of the eternal realm. Sakyamuni's eyes were like torches. At a glance, he saw the extraordinariness of the formation around the boat. He was slightly surprised. "Let's attack together and break this formation." Golden Lamp Master snorted coldly and waved his hand across the air. The golden lamp in his hand burst out with a terrifying golden flame. The golden flames were too terrifying. The moment they appeared, they had the power to burn the sky and boil the sea. They filled the entire world and surged toward Zhuowen's boat. The moment Sakyamuni and Golden Lamp Dharmaraja made their moves, the blood-clad king, Taoist Jing Ma, Ghost Child, and the others also made their moves. Terrifying attacks poured out continuously. "Brother Guan, you're quite fast. Don't you remember our old friendship at all?" The profound thunder sovereign Gong Shuekuan mocked as he looked at the expressionless Guanihan beside him. Guanihan said coldly, "Gong Shuekuan, you don't have to provoke me. My relationship with little friend Zhuo was nothing more than a partnership. Now that our partnership has come to an end, why can't I fight for it from him?" Gong Shuekuan only sneered and did not refute. Everyone's attacks gathered together, creating a multicolored scene. In the end, all of them landed on the black awning ship that Zhuowen was on. Crack, crack. Suddenly, there was a series of terrifying explosions, and countless cracks began to appear on the ancient ultimate killing divine array surrounding the black awning ship. At the stern of the boat, Zhuowen's pupils shrank. He knew very well that the eternal divine killing array was about to collapse. There's still a little distance. Zhuowen saw that the cliff in front of him was getting closer and closer. A trace of decisiveness and ruthlessness flashed in his eyes. At the moment when the eternal divine killing array was about to collapse, the boat suddenly accelerated to the extreme. The entire boat began to disintegrate because of the high speed. Zhuowen had sacrificed the black awning boat to obtain extreme speed. At the moment when the boat disintegrated, they finally reached the cliff. At the same time, the eternal divine killing array surrounding the boat finally reached its limit. It was full of cracks and could not hold on for much longer. Zhuowen waved his sleeve, and a surge of divine power poured out. The black awning ship that was about to disintegrate suddenly turned around and rushed towards the black awning ship that Sakura and the others were on. "This guy, Sakyamuni, Golden Lamp Fawang and the others saw the disintegrated boat rushing back and their pupils shrank. They naturally knew what Zhuowen wanted to do. Dodge! Blood Robe King Xue Feng shouted at the ferryman at the stern of the boat. The boat in front of us is too fast. I can't dodge it. The ferryman roared, his voice full of shock and anger. Then, under the horrified gazes of Xue Feng and the others, he jumped into the sea of misery. Boom! At the moment when the ferryman jumped into the sea of misery, the disintegrated boat in front of them finally approached and finally hit the boat they were on. Bang! 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 In an instant, there were continuous explosions in the air. The boat that Sakyamuni was on completely collapsed and broke into countless pieces. At the same time, Zhuowen completely detonated the broken Eternal Divine Killing Array. In an instant, the terrifying explosive energy was like ripples on water. It completely burst open and completely enveloped Sakyamuni, Golden Lamp Fawang and the others. Let's go! At the moment when the array exploded, Zhuowen shouted and took the lead to jump to the entrance of the passage at the edge of the cliff. Elder Anshi, Li Yinglong, Duan Jipeng and the others followed closely behind. Not long after everyone rushed into the passage, the explosion on the Sea of Misery gradually subsided. Golden Lamp Fawang, Sakyamuni, Ghost Child and the others fell into the Sea of Misery. They used their own divine powers and their own methods to slowly cross the Sea of Misery. However, their speed was extremely slow and could not be compared to the speed of the boat. When they all reached the edge of the cliff, Zhuowen and the others were long gone. Chase! Sakyamuni's face was gloomy. He took a step forward and rushed into the entrance of the passage first. However, as soon as he entered, a terrifying explosion immediately set off and instantly drowned Sakyamuni. After the explosion, Sakyamuni appeared in a sorry state and said angrily, "Bastard, Yun has set up many restrictions in this passage. If we accidentally trigger them, it will be very troublesome." Golden Lamp Fawang and the others' faces changed slightly. They did not expect Zhuowen to be so insidious as to set up restrictions in the passage in advance. After they entered the passage, they found that these restrictions were very simple but enough to slow down their pursuit. Zhuowen and the others quickly passed through the passage and appeared on top of the giant city. As soon as they came out, the bloody handprints, bloody footprints, and even invisible behemoths that were waiting outside rushed toward them without hesitation. Zhuowen had been prepared for this. He immediately summoned the chariot and disappeared from the giant city in an instant with the others. The chariot was so fast that these strange creatures did not even have time to react before they lost track of Zhuowen and the others. Not long after Zhuowen left, Sakyamuni, Golden Lamp Fawang and the others successfully came out of the passage. However, the price was that they experienced many explosions. They were covered in dust and looked very miserable. As soon as they appeared, the bloody handprints, bloody footprints, skulls and other invisible creatures in the giant city seemed to be very excited and launched a terrifying attack toward them. Chapter 4587. Boom, boom, boom. Sakyamuni clapped his right hand in the air and a blazing golden divine power gushed out, forming a mountain-like palm print in the air. The countless bloody handprints and bloody footprints in the giant city were all smashed into dust by these terrifying golden palms. Thump, 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 thump. Heavy footsteps were heard as a strange and huge formless object rushed toward Sakyamuni. Golden Lamp Master snorted and the golden lamp in his right hand burst out a blazing golden flame. It rushed toward the huge formless object. The rolling golden flames seemed to have the power to burn the sky. It covered the sky and poured down, wrapping around the formless object. Under the golden flame, the outline of the formless object was gradually revealed. At a closer look, the formless object looked like a huge elephant. In the rolling golden flame, it stepped on its 4 hooves and retreated quickly. Trying to escape? Golden Lamp Master sneered. He held the lamp in his left hand and formed a seal with his right hand. The rolling golden flame instantly became several times stronger. The formless object let out a shrill scream as its huge body shrank and melted. Finally, it disappeared completely in the golden flame. On the other side, Blood-robed King Xuefeng sneered and clenched his fists. Countless souls came out of his sleeves and condensed into thick soul chains. These soul chains were specifically targeted at souls. Once bound, the soul would be imprisoned and it would be difficult to escape. Xuefeng waved his right hand and the soul chains swept out and tightly bound the huge head rockery that was rolling in front of him. The fake mountain of skulls that had been moving forward courageously suddenly stopped in its tracks. Its huge eyes revealed a look of pain. As long as you still have a soul, you can't escape from my hands. Xuefeng's eyes were filled with pride. He put 2 fingers on his right hand together and gently touched one end of the chain. The chains in Xuefeng's hands suddenly burned with a crimson flame. In the blink of an eye, the crimson flame spread out and covered all the chains in Xuefeng's hands. The head rockery let out a shrill scream. The crimson flame that Xuefeng released on the chains was a flame that targeted souls directly. No matter what it was, as long as it had a soul, it would forever suffer the burning pain of the blood flames. What Xuefeng liked the most was to play with other people's souls in the palm of his hand to satisfy his perverted sadism. After Sakyamune, Golden Lamp Fawang, Guan and the others had completely dealt with the strange creatures in the giant city, Xuefeng was still enjoying the screams from the fake mountain of skulls. Sakyamune, Golden Lamp Dharmaraja, and the others frowned slightly. They also felt that Xuefeng was too abnormal. He didn't finish off his opponent earlier, but instead enjoyed the pain of his opponent. Blood-robed King, I think we've dealt with him. We don't have much time left. We still need to chase after Jun. Golden Lamp King said coldly. Xuefeng reacted and shrugged. He clenched his fists and the chains tightened, destroying the soul of the fake mountain. When all of the soul chains returned to Xuefeng's body, he followed closely behind Sakyamune, Golden Lamp Fawang, and the others, and quickly rushed toward the exit. They expected that after entering this world, Yun would definitely escape toward the exit of the relic. They were extremely fast and soon arrived at the huge valley at the exit of the relic. At this moment, the valley was in a mess. It was full of broken bones and skulls, which looked extremely horrifying. Ichun and the others, Sakyamune's eyes were like torches. As soon as he entered the valley, he saw Yun and the others at the end of the valley. At this moment, Zhuowen and the others had just left the valley and found Sakyamune, Golden Lamp King, and the other experts. Oh no, run. Zhuowen didn't even think about it. He took out the chariot that he had prepared earlier. After calling Old Man Anshi, Duan Jipeng, and the others into it, he urged the chariot to fly away. Where do you think you're going? Sakyamuni was furious. He took a step and appeared near the end of the valley. He punched out and countless golden fist prints fell. Golden Lamp King, Blood-robed King, Guan Yihan, and the other experts reacted quickly and launched terrifying attacks. Boom, 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 boom. Their combined attacks were so terrifying that they fell outside the valley and razed the entire valley to the ground. Unfortunately, Zhuowen had left before them, causing their attacks to hit nothing but air. Sakyamune didn't even think about it. He took out a divine ship and flew away. Golden Lamp Dharmaraja, Blood-robed King, and the others also took out their flying divine weapons and chased after Zhuowen. However, they soon returned to this place, and each of them was shocked. What is this guy's mount? Why is it so fast? We just chased after him, and he's already gone? Sakyamune's face was gloomy, and there was a trace of shock in his eyes. Since he was accepted as a personal disciple by Master Yuanxing, his horizons and knowledge had greatly increased. Even so, he still couldn't recognize the origin of Zhuowen's chariot. The speed of his chariot is appalling. Could it be a flying divine artifact at the fifth sky of the eternal realm? Golden Lamp King's eyes flickered. As soon as he said that, everyone was shocked and fell silent. A flying divine artifact at the fifth sky of the eternal realm was enough to make any expert in the 100 extraterritorial territories jealous and fight for it. This is just my guess. As for whether it's true or not, we can only find out after we catch Shun. Golden Lamp King said lightly. Sakyamune's eyes flickered and he said, Yun is too cunning. Plus, he has a strange mount. Searching for him in this extraterritorial battlefield is like looking for a needle in a haystack. Shirtion is right. Ghost Child responded. Do you have any other good ideas? Blood-robed King asked with a sinister smile. Let's work together to arrest this guy. As long as we offer enough bargaining chips, there will naturally be people who will do it regardless of their own safety. And this time, our main goal is to find Zhuowen's whereabouts, and we only need to do this. Sakyamuni whispered his suggestion, and everyone clapped their hands in agreement. With Sakyamuni's suggestion, Nguyen can't escape even if he has wings. This time, we must set up an inescapable net and take Zhuowen down. Golden Lamp Dharmaraja said, his eyes gleaming. After Sakyamuni, Golden Lamp King, and the others finished their discussion and left the demonic corpse cliff, Yuan drove the chariot and flew across the extraterritorial battlefield. With the speed of the chariot, we can return to the station soon. Once we return to the station, we must leave immediately. Otherwise, we won't have a chance to leave. Zhuowen reminded Old Man Anshi and the others as he controlled the chariot of chariots. Zhu Xiaoyu is right. We must act fast enough. Elder Anshi nodded in agreement. Don't worry, the chariot, Yuan smiled slightly, and then his face suddenly changed. Brother Zhuo, what's wrong with you? Duan Jipeng immediately noticed that Zhuowen's face was not right. I'm going to break through. I can't suppress it anymore. Zhuowen said with a pale face. Chapter 4588. What? Breaking through now? Everyone was shocked. They did not expect that Zhuowen would actually reach the boundary of a breakthrough at this most critical moment. You can't break through in the extraterritorial battlefield. Once you do, it will cause a huge commotion and attract Sakyamuni, Golden Lamp Dharmaraja, and the others. Old Man Anshi said with a gloomy face. Leave the extraterritorial battlefield and go to the extraterritorial battlefield's extraterritorial starry sky. Zhuowen said in a low voice as he endured the shock of breaking through. Duan Jipeng, Old Man Anshi, and the others were shocked. They didn't expect Zhuowen to dare to go to the extraterritorial starry sky. The extraterritorial battlefield was originally an area where the top experts of the 100 domains used their great divine abilities to surround the extraterritorial starry sky. This area became the extraterritorial battlefield. Although the extraterritorial battlefield was dangerous, it was still acceptable. However, the extraterritorial battlefield's extraterritorial starry sky was the real danger. The real terror in the depths of the extraterritorial starry sky was all in the extraterritorial battlefield's extraterritorial starry sky. The extraterritorial battlefield was much less dangerous than the extraterritorial starry sky because there were many boundaries set up by the top experts at the border. There's no time. Senior Anshi, Family Head Li, you stay in the extraterritorial battlefield. I have to go to the extraterritorial starry sky to break through. Zhuowen's face was pale and his breathing became rapid. He stared at Old Man Anshi and the others and said in a deep voice, Okay, Zhuo Xiaoyu, be careful. Old Man Anshi said in a deep voice. Zhuowen nodded. He steered the chariot and turned into a stream of light, heading towards the chaotic starry sky. I hope Zhuo Xiaoyu can escape this calamity. Old Man Anshi muttered to himself in shame as he watched Zhuowen leave. Li Yinglong said helplessly, Taoist Anshi, Zhuo Xiaoyu's matter is no longer something we can interfere with. And I'm afraid we may not be safe from now on. After all, Sakyamuni and the others know about our relationship with Zhuo Xiaoyu. Yes, we have to be careful from now on. Old Man Anshi nodded in agreement. In the vast void of the foreign battlefield, a stream of light flashed over at an extremely fast speed. Zhuowen sat upright in the chariot of chariot, cold sweat dripping down his forehead, and the aura on his body rapidly shot up like a rocket. He had been suppressing his cultivation for too long, and finally he could no longer suppress it. Duan Jipeng, Luo Ye, and Ziyang looked at Zhuowen worriedly. They wanted to help him, but they knew it was unrealistic. Suddenly, the chariot stopped. 100 meters in front of him, there was a sparkling barrier. On the other side of the barrier was the boundless starry sky. This is the extraterritorial battlefield's barrier. Outside the barrier is the real chaotic starry sky. Duan Jipeng stared at the sparkling barrier in front of him and said in a low voice. This barrier was set up by countless top experts. We can't leave this place at all. Luo Ye frowned slightly. This barrier is not unbreakable. The real experts of the 100 domains often roam the chaotic starry sky in search of the real treasures in the chaotic starry sky. They didn't enter the chaotic starry sky to destroy the barrier violently. Zhuowen suddenly said. Duan Jipeng looked at Zhuowen, who had jumped off the chariot with difficulty and walked to the barrier. I learned the way to open the barrier from Tan Jipeng's inherited memories, but I can only open a very small hole. As Zhuowen spoke, he pointed his right hand at the barrier in front of him, and like a dragon, he drew special patterns and lines on the barrier's surface. An opening suddenly appeared in the impenetrable barrier, just enough for one person to pass through. Brother Duan, you guys enter my great world first. The chaotic starry sky is extremely dangerous. If you guys go in with me, I'm afraid you will be in danger. Zhuowen looked at Duan Jipeng and the other two and said in a low voice. Duan Jipeng and the other two naturally understood this, so they didn't refuse Zhuowen's suggestion. After Duan Jipeng and the other two completely entered the great world, Zhuowen stepped out of the barrier, summoned the chariot, and instantly flew forward. In the deep and icy chaotic starry sky, countless black shadows were moving stealthily, as if they were waiting to hunt fresh prey. Everywhere the chariot passed, countless black shadows surged over like a tide, wanting to stop Zhuowen. Unfortunately, the chariot's speed was too fast. The instant the black shadows enveloped it, it flashed past, causing them to miss. The deeper they went into the chaotic starry sky, the uglier Zhuowen's expression became. The chaotic starry sky was indeed very dangerous. There were too many terrifying and murderous intents hidden in the deep darkness. If one wasn't careful, it was very easy to die without knowing why. Boom! Suddenly, hundreds of thousands of meters ahead of them, a huge claw swept over. This black claw was too huge. At a glance, it was hundreds of thousands of meters in size, practically blotting out the sky. The speed of the claw was too fast. It swept in front of Zhuowen in the blink of an eye, instantly blocking all of Zhuowen's escape routes. Patter! Although the chariot was fast, it still couldn't escape the palm of the huge claw. In an instant, it was caught in the middle of the black claw's palm. Zhuowen and the chariot were completely submerged in the claw, disappearing without a trace. Crack, crack, crack. The claw clenched tightly and slowly retracted into the darkness of the starry sky. However, the moment the claw moved, a vast and boundless aura suddenly erupted from the center of the claw. Rays of terrifying brilliance erupted, leaking out from the gaps of the claw, and rushed into the depths of the starry sky in all directions. Boom! What followed was a terrifying explosion. The huge claw seemed to be unable to withstand some kind of terrifying energy and exploded with a loud bang. Pitch-black blood spurted out, and in the starry sky within a radius of tens of thousands of kilometers, there was a terrifying black rainstorm. Amidst the black rainstorm, a figure slowly walked out. His whole body was emitting blazing light, and he stepped in the starry sky as if he was walking on flat ground. He was Zhuowen. At this moment, Zhuowen's aura had skyrocketed to an extremely terrifying level, wantonly spreading out and infinitely. Countless black raindrops fell on his body, but they were all blocked by the light on the surface of his body, unable to get close to his body. I'm finally going to break through. I wonder what kind of transformation will happen after I break through to the inverse ancient starlight stage? Zhuowen's faint voice slowly resounded in the chaotic starry sky. Then, with him as the center, the starry sky collapsed inch by inch. Cracks in the starry sky wantonly spread out in all directions with Zhuowen as the starting point. It was as if Zhuowen was releasing some kind of terrifying power to destroy the entire starry sky barrier. After sensing the terrifying aura emitted by Zhuowen, the countless shadows that originally existed in the surroundings retreated one after another, not daring to get close to Zhuowen. At this moment, Zhuowen's aura was too terrifying. It was far more powerful than an ordinary inverse ancient starlight stage cultivator's breakthrough. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 4589. Boom, boom, boom. With Zhuowen at the center, the space around him began to crumble. Terrifying cracks spread out in all directions like water ripples. In an instant, the space around Zhuowen within a radius of tens of billions of miles was filled with dense black cracks. Streaks of terrifying energy surged out from the depths of the countless black cracks, bombarding Zhuowen's body without any regard for his life. Zhuowen's expression changed slightly. Although he had been prepared for this, he was still shocked by the first wave of tribulation energy. This wave of tribulation energy was simply too terrifying. The multicolored tribulation energy shot out and bombarded Zhuowen without any regard for his life. It was as if it wanted to blast Zhuowen into smithereens. Zhuowen didn't even think about it and summoned his 9 cosmic manifestations. The 9 cosmic manifestations spread out in 9 different directions around Zhuowen. They let out earth-shattering roars and used their various abilities to resist the terrifying tribulation energy coming from all directions. Boom! After the first wave of tribulation energy passed, Zhuowen's face was pale. Of the 9 cosmic manifestations around him, only 4 remained. These 4 were Zhuowen's 4 most powerful cosmic manifestations, but their auras were weak and their expressions dejected. Kacha! Kacha! Suddenly, from the depths of the surrounding space cracks, a dense and terrifying sound rang out. This sound was like a pair of scissors cutting bamboo. It was extremely ear-piercing and unpleasant to the ear. Zhuowen's pupils shrank. He could feel that an even more terrifying tribulation energy was brewing in the depths of the space cracks. This tribulation energy was far more terrifying and powerful than the first wave. Zhuowen didn't even think about it before summoning the Taiyu sacred sword. At the same time, his right hand touched his forehead. Immediately, a blazing golden light surged out from between his brows. Streaks of golden divine soul sword intent poured out like rain and surrounded his body, forming an extremely sturdy defensive barrier. Boom! The second wave of tribulation energy blasted out again. Various forms of energy poured out from the depths of the space cracks like rain. These energies included red lotuses that were thousands of feet long, giant trees that emitted silver light, giant tigers that were condensed from lightning, and so on. This energy seemed to have a life of its own. As soon as it emerged from the starry sky crack, it rushed toward Zhuowen without any regard for its own safety. In an instant, a terrifying explosion erupted in the starry sky. The terrifying explosive energy suddenly swelled up, forming a sphere of energy with Zhuowen as the center. Furthermore, this energy ball was still expanding at an extremely fast speed. The explosive energy was also becoming more and more terrifying. In an instant, the 4 cosmic laksana around Zhuowen crumbled like paper. The explosive energy smashed into the defensive barrier formed by countless divine soul sword intents with unstoppable force. Bang! With a muffled sound, the soul and sword intent barrier around Zhuowen suddenly trembled violently and then blocked the surrounding explosive energy from continuing to invade. Zhuowen's face was gloomy. Although he had withstood the second wave of explosions, he could tell that this wave was not completely over yet. Moreover, the soul and sword intent barrier around him was gradually weakening. Fortunately, my soul has been tempered in the sea of bitterness, and it has improved further. Otherwise, I may not have been able to withstand the second wave. Zhuowen sighed in his heart. He had never thought that the tribulation to advance to the inverse ancient starlight level would be so powerful beyond his expectations. The second wave of the tribulation gradually dissipated. Zhuowen discovered that the starry sky within hundreds of billions of miles around him was in a mess. Cracks in the starry sky could be seen everywhere. They were densely packed, as if they had been scratched countless times by the sharp claws of countless beasts. It looked very terrifying. As for those strange shadows that had been hiding in the surroundings, they had long since fled without a trace. Zhuowen's tribulation was something that even these strange creatures hidden in the depths of the chaotic starry sky were extremely afraid of. It's so quiet. After the second wave of the tribulation passed, the surrounding starry sky became very quiet. Even the tribulation had disappeared, and the aura of the tribulation had completely disappeared. Zhuowen's eyes were solemn as he looked around. His divine sense constantly scanned the surroundings, inch by inch, but he found nothing. It was as if the tribulation had disappeared in an instant. Could it be that the tribulation has passed? Zhuowen could not help but laugh, but it was a bitter laugh. He knew that the next wave of the tribulation must still be brewing, and this long-term brewing also meant that the third wave of the tribulation would be extremely terrifying. Zhuowen quietly prepared all the trump cards in the macro world. Once the third wave of the tribulation appeared, and if it was too strong, he would immediately take out all the trump cards he could. The silence lasted for a long time. Just when Zhuowen thought that the tribulation would not come, suddenly, the countless cracks in the starry sky around him collapsed completely. The surrounding starry sky completely collapsed, and the spatial fragments were constantly overlapping and merging, forming a terrifying starry sky spatial storm. A storm in Daokong's space continued to condense and increase. In an instant, hundreds of billions of miles were all terrifying spatial storms. Zhuowen's figure was completely submerged in the spatial storm. Zhuowen stood in the center of the storm. Countless spiritual sword wills circled around him, making him glow with golden light. He looked like a god. However, under the influence of the spatial storm, the soul and sword essences around him were constantly decreasing. Bang, bang, bang. Suddenly, countless giant hands reached out from the depths of the spatial storm. These giant hands were similar to some kind of claw, and their surface was covered with long green hair. The arms were billions of feet long, and they looked ferocious and terrifying. The giant hands appeared densely and bombarded Zhuowen from all directions. Boom! Zhuowen groaned, and the soul and sword essences that had been bitterly holding on around him instantly collapsed into countless pieces. What are these things? Zhuowen's pupils shrank, and he used the great black heaven handprint without thinking. His soul spread out like the sea, turning into huge handprints that blasted out in all directions, blocking his surroundings. Boom, boom, boom. The great black heaven handprint and the green-haired giant hands collided, and then time seemed to stop. Then, Zhuowen was shocked to find that the surface of the great black heaven handprint was covered in cracks. Oh no! Zhuowen roared and immediately used the Boundless Sea of Bitterness Sutra. Countless spiritual energy gushed out, forming waves after waves of the Sea of Bitterness. It was like countless dragons emerging from the sea. It was extremely terrifying. In an instant, Zhuowen's surroundings turned into a boundless sea of bitterness, forming a special domain barrier. Rip, rip. The barrier of the Sea of Bitterness was directly torn into countless cracks, and the giant green hands reached out and grabbed Zhuowen, who was in the middle of the Sea of Bitterness. Zhuowen's face changed drastically. These giant green hands were too difficult to deal with. The Great Black Heaven Handprint and the Boundless Sea of Bitterness Sutra, two powerful soul superpowers, could not stop the giant green hands at all. It seems that I can only use this trump card. Zhuowen sighed softly. Chapter 4590. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Countless giant green hands intertwined with each other like intertwined tree roots, silently attacking Zhuowen from all directions. Instantly, a terrifying power swept through the surroundings like a monstrous wave, causing the already devastated starry sky to become even more dilapidated and miserable. The target of these giant green hands was Zhuowen, who was at the center. Swoosh! The giant green hands were too fast. In the blink of an eye, Zhuowen was completely submerged. Grand Imperial Seal out. A faint voice came from within the giant green hands, spreading throughout the entire starry sky. A ray of golden light escaped from within the countless giant green hands. At first, the golden light was only the size of a candle flame, but it grew bigger and bigger until it almost reached the clouds, dyeing the entire starry sky a blazing golden color. Rip! A sound similar to cloth tearing could be heard from within the giant green hands. Then, the countless giant green hands that were intertwined with each other collapsed, shattering into countless pieces of green flesh that scattered throughout the starry sky. The moment the giant green hands shattered, the golden light contained within could no longer be blocked. The terrifying blazing light overflowed and spread throughout the entire starry sky. At the center of the golden light, a figure slowly walked out. He was none other than Zhuowen. At this moment, Yuan had his hands behind his back as he slowly walked through the starry sky. Above his head, a palm-sized seal floated quietly. The seal was gilded with gold, and the blazing golden light was released from within the seal. A terrifying aura also constantly swept out from the seal, making it seem exceptionally terrifying. As for Zhuowen, he was like a god as he slowly walked out of the golden light. Wherever he passed, the giant green hands would constantly attack him, but they were all blocked by the power of the Grand Imperial Seal. In the end, Yuan sat cross-legged on the ground, relying on the power of the Grand Imperial Seal to block the increasing number of giant green hands in the starry sky crack. After an unknown period of time, the giant green hands that covered hundreds of billions of miles in the starry sky gradually retreated into the depths of the starry sky crack. In an instant, the surroundings became extremely quiet. Yuan was still seated cross-legged above the starry sky, and he was as immovable as a mountain. He knew very well that the calamity was far from over. As time gradually passed, the spatial crack continued to expand, and the calamities that surged out from it grew more and more terrifying. However, the Tai Sovereign Seal was simply too powerful. No matter how terrifying the calamities were, it was able to withstand wave after wave of even more powerful calamities. What kind of divine weapon is the Grand Emperor's Seal? How powerful! Zhuan silently stared at the golden seal floating above his head, a thoughtful look appearing in the depths of his eyes. At first, he guessed that the Grand Emperor's Seal was a fourth heavenly layer eternal divine tool, but as his cultivation continued to improve, he immediately overthrew this naive idea. Now, he thought that the Grand Emperor's Seal was at least at the fifth heavenly layer of the eternal realm. Of course, he didn't know its exact level. This was because he had never come into contact with a real fifth heavenly layer eternal divine weapon. In the midst of the calamity, Yuan felt that time was passing extremely slowly, as if there was no end. Finally, when the last calamity energy fell on the sturdy barrier formed by the power of the Grand Emperor's Seal, he found that the calamity around him was gradually dissipating. The suffocating aura that seemed to be strangling his throat also gradually disappeared. The spatial cracks in the surrounding starry sky also gradually healed. It seems that the calamity is over. Zhuan looked around at the phenomenon around him, and there was a touch of excitement in the depths of his eyes. He knew that from this moment on, he had officially stepped into the realm of defying ancient starlight. The moment Zhuowen was about to put away the Grand Emperor's Seal, his body suddenly stiffened, and he felt that something was wrong. He withdrew his hand and scanned the surrounding starry sky again. He found that the surrounding starry sky was too quiet. Moreover, there was no trace of the recovered cracks in the starry sky at all. Logically speaking, after the spatial cracks recovered, there would be a process. Even if they were completely recovered, the starry sky would not be the same as before. However, Zhuan found that the surrounding starry sky was exactly the same as before he went through the calamity. It was as if the terrifying calamity had not happened at all. Zhuowen continued to sit cross-legged and wait. Even if his judgment was wrong, he would only have to wait a little longer, and it would not affect him much. If his judgment was correct, then he would be in big trouble. Time passed by minute. Just as Zhuowen was getting impatient, a terrifying explosion suddenly occurred in the surrounding starry sky. Invisible circular ripples spread out one after another in the starry sky. Then, with Zhuowen as the center, the starry sky within a range of hundreds of billions of miles collapsed completely. Zhuowen was like a helpless lamb, struggling bitterly in the torrent of space that was collapsing. Fortunately, the Grand Emperor's Seal was extremely powerful, and it protected Zhuowen from being injured by the spatial torrent. This calamity is really cunning. It actually used an illusion to lure me? Yuan seemed to have thought of something, and his face turned extremely ugly. At the same time, he was shocked. He had a vague feeling that this calamity was completely different from the previous ones. It was as if this calamity was being manipulated by someone. If he had thought that he had successfully passed the calamity and kept the Grand Emperor's seal, he would have been a cold corpse by now. The spatial torrent did not last for too long, and it gradually calmed down. After that, Zhuowen discovered that he was no longer in the chaotic starry sky, but in a simple and unadorned room. Coincidentally, he was lying on a bed. At the same time, he noticed a young girl dressed as a maid lying beside him. The moment he saw the young girl, Zhuowen immediately recognized her. Chun-er. Zhuowen called out softly. He remembered very clearly that the first person he saw when he transmigrated into this world and woke up was Chun-er. Later, as he continued to grow stronger, and Chun-er did not have much talent in martial arts, she was gradually left behind by him. In the end, she died of old age in the Zhuo family. Young master, you're awake. Chun-er sleepily raised her head and saw that Zhuowen had woken up. Her beautiful eyes shone with surprise. Are you really awake? Zhuowen sighed softly and patted Chun-er's little head with a trace of guilt in his eyes. Chun-er did not understand what Zhuowen meant. She tilted her head and suddenly said, Young master, are you hungry? I'll get you something to eat. Go. Zhuowen nodded. After Chun-er left, the scene in front of Zhuowen changed again. He found himself standing in front of the Jiehuan tablet. Zhuo Xiangding, Zhuo Dingtian, Zhuo Xiang, and the rest of the Zhuo family were all looking at him. There was a lot of discussion around him, but most of it was ridicule and ridicule. Zhuowen's gaze was complicated. He gently pressed his right hand on the Jiehuan tablet. The Jiehuan tablet emitted a blazing light, and then the scene in front of Zhuowen changed again. Just like that, the scene in front of Zhuowen's eyes kept changing. It was basically all the big and small things he had experienced over the years. There were sour, sweet, bitter, and spicy. In the end, the image stopped at a remote fishing village on Earth. Chapter 4591. In the courtyard of a two-story tile-roofed house, a middle-aged couple was diligently drying dried fish, talking and laughing. What are you waiting for? Come and help me. The middle-aged man who was drying the fish looked at Zhuowen and suddenly said with a straight face, Father, why are you so fierce? You'll scare when... The middle-aged woman rebuked. Zhuowen looked at the middle-aged couple silently, the corners of his eyes gradually becoming moist. Zhuowen murmured softly. In his previous life, he had died in an accident before he could fulfill his filial duties. From then on, he had come to the unfamiliar heavenly armor continent. Even though his cultivation had reached the heavens and he had returned to Earth, he found that things had changed. His parents had grown old, and he was no longer the same Zhuowen of the past. Although he had used his great power to reverse time and space and let the family of three go through a reincarnation cycle again. However, there were some things that could not be salvaged by relying on great magical powers. If I hadn't died and was still on Earth, would the outcome have been different? Zhuowen murmured to himself. His eyes suddenly became misty, and he fell into deep confusion. Come here quickly. Dad and Mom are waiting for you. The middle-aged woman rushed over with a loving smile on her face. She gently held Zhuowen's hand. It's Mom's hand. Holding the middle-aged woman's hand and feeling the warmth of her palm, Zhuowen's heart completely softened. He walked softly behind the middle-aged woman and walked toward the middle-aged man who was waving at him. Is this really the home I want to return to? Suddenly, Zhuowen stopped. He stared at the middle-aged woman who turned around and looked at him in surprise, and the middle-aged man whose smile was gradually stiffening in the distance. I'm no longer the person I used to be. So, I can't go back with you. Zhuowen knelt on the ground and kowtowed heavily to the two of them. Then, he walked back without turning his head. Where are you going? The middle-aged woman and middle-aged man kept calling out to him from behind, but Zhuowen turned a deaf ear to them. Looking back on everything that had happened in his past and present life, Zhuowen suddenly realized that he should have returned to his original heart and searched for his original intention when he first embarked on the path of cultivation. Suddenly, Zhuowen found that his whole body was floating up into the sky, and his speed was getting faster and faster. Gradually, everything on the ground became smaller and smaller in his eyes. He saw streams of space-time flowing before his eyes. Within these streams of space-time appeared all the things that Zhuan had experienced over the years. As Zhuan kept rising, the space-time in front of him seemed to be flowing in reverse. Zhuan's memory kept rewinding, all the way back to the moment when he had just woken up from the Zhua family. Thus, my original goal was to constantly become stronger, to have the power to protect the people I want to protect, to have the freedom to not be controlled by fate. At this moment, Zhuan's eyes were as clear as water. At this moment, he found his original intention, saw through his heart, and grasped his true self. The moment Zhuan found his original intention, the scenery that appeared around him began to show dense cracks. These cracks were densely packed and covered the entire space. Finally, it completely shattered into countless transparent fragments. In the end, the strange space completely shattered. Zhuan slowly opened his eyes. The scene that entered his eyes was a boundless, chaotic, starry sky. The surrounding starry sky, which was originally full of devastation, was gradually recovering. The countless black shadows that had been scared away by the calamity were like black clouds that gradually spread over, wanting to swallow Zhuan whole. Boom! The moment these black shadows approached Zhuan, the latter gently waved his right hand. Suddenly, a terrifying aura suddenly broke out, and the gradually recovering starry sky was full of dense cracks again. Behind Zhuan, a gigantic figure that seemed to touch the heavens and the earth appeared. This huge figure held a huge starry sky world with both hands, standing in the void behind Zhuan, as if it was an eternal existence. The moment the star giant appeared, it gently stamped its feet, and the power of starlight spread out like waves. Countless black shadows that were close to it screamed miserably, and then all of them dissipated. At the same time, the same huge star giant appeared in the void to the right, left, and front of Zhuan. These three star giants also held the huge starry sky world with both hands, and surrounded Zhuan like the most loyal guards, firmly protecting Zhuan in the center. 4 star giants. Zhuan looked around and stared at the 4 starry sky giants. Deep in his eyes, he was deep in thought. He could feel that the 4 star giants were not exactly the same as the starry sky world, but they should have completely different characteristics and abilities. As for the specific differences, he was not very clear at the moment. He was afraid that he would have to figure it out himself. Boom, boom, boom. Zhuan waved his sleeve, and the 4 starry sky worlds collapsed into countless starlight and integrated into Zhuan's body. After doing that, he waved his sleeve and summoned Duan Jipeng, Luo Ye, and Ziyang from the macro world. Brother Zhua, it took you a long time to pass the tribulation this time. As soon as Duan Jipeng came out, he said with a strange look, "It took me a long time?" Duan was surprised. He felt that it took him a few days at most to pass the tribulation this time. Master, it took you a long time to pass the tribulation this time. We waited in the macro world for 2 months. During this time, we couldn't get in touch with you, and for some reason, the macro world was completely cut off from the outside world. We couldn't go out. Luo Ye said quickly. Hearing that, Zhuan nodded and thought of the last tribulation. That was the inner demon tribulation. It seemed that he had spent a lot of time in the inner demon tribulation. If he had finally chosen to follow his parents in the inner demon, he would have lost his conscience and failed the tribulation. Failing the tribulation meant that he would face death without any chance of survival. Fortunately, I passed it in the end. It seems that the inner demon tribulation was the most terrifying tribulation this time. Zhuan muttered to himself with lingering fear. Brother Zhua, what should we do next? Duan Jipeng looked around and found that the black shadows around the chaotic starry sky were gradually entangling them again. His face turned slightly ugly. The black shadows hidden in the depths of the chaotic starry sky were too strange, and the aura they emitted made Duan Jipeng very wary. Return to the Archean Heavenly Tao Academy station. Zhuan said slowly, and Duan Jipeng and the others' faces changed greatly. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 4592. Brother Zhua, are you sure you want to return to the station? Duan Jipeng braced himself and asked again. Now, because Zhuo had obtained most of the resources and inheritance of the ruins, he had become the target of public criticism. The experts of the 9 super domains must have been watching him for a long time. Once he returned to the station, he would most likely be in grave danger. This is the only way to smoothly take the domain origin fragment away from the extraterritorial battlefield. Zhuo calmly stared at Duan Jipeng, and then with a wave of his right hand, he took out a spherical fragment from the outside world. This spherical fragment flickered with light, and it was covered in strange patterns and laws. The light it emitted illuminated the surroundings, causing everyone present to feel relaxed and happy. This is... Duan Jipeng looked at the spherical fragment suspended in Zhuo's palm with bright eyes, vaguely guessing what it was. You guessed right, this is the domain origin fragment of the Abyss domain. Although it's only a very small piece, it's enough to upgrade a higher domain to a super domain in a short time. As Zhuo spoke, he handed the domain origin fragment to Duan Jipeng. Duan Jipeng carefully took the domain origin fragment and looked at Zhuo in puzzlement. The domain origin fragment was of great importance and should have been kept by Zhuo. He was a little puzzled as to why Zhuo would give this fragment to him. If we act together, we can't leave the extraterritorial battlefield, Zhuo said indifferently. Duan Jipeng, Luo Ye, and Ziyang were all extremely intelligent people and immediately understood the meaning behind Zhuo's words. Brother Zhuo, don't tell me you're planning to. Duan Jipeng frowned. Yes, I plan to attract everyone's attention while you take advantage of this opportunity to quietly take away the domain origin fragment, Zhuo said in a deep voice. Master, it's too dangerous. Those are all super domain experts. Luo Ye's beautiful eyes were full of worry. Duan Jipeng and Xiang also hurriedly objected. I've made up my mind. There's no need to say anything more. Zhuowen's face turned serious and he continued, Don't worry, I have the Chariot of Chariot, a unique mount. It won't be easy for Jindeng Fuang and Sakyamuni to kill me. Moreover, I've obtained Tan Jipeng's inheritance and treasures, so I can protect myself. Duan Jipeng, Ziyang, and Luo Ye looked at each other and sighed softly in their hearts. They were quite familiar with Zhuowen's character. They knew that once the latter had decided on something, no matter what they said, they would not be able to change it. Moreover, what Zhuowen said was correct. The Chariot of Chariot he possessed was indeed extremely fast. With such a mount, no one in the 100 territories could easily kill Zhuowen. I'll return to the extraterritorial battlefield first. After I attract the attention of Golden Lamp Dharmaraja and the others, you guys find a chance to leave. Remember, don't leave through the Primeval Heavenly Tao Academy's base, and don't leave through the Abyss Realm's base. Leave from the other 4 invincible domains. Zhuowen reminded him with a serious gaze. Understood. Duan Jipeng and the others nodded solemnly. We'll return to the extraterritorial battlefield first. You guys go to the macro world to disguise yourselves and change your aura and appearance. After entering the extraterritorial battlefield, we'll split up immediately. After Zhuowen finished speaking, he summoned Duan Jipeng and the others into the macro world. He then drove the Chariot of Chariot, turned into a stream of flowing light, and broke through the sky. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Countless black shadows rushed out of the chaotic starry sky and launched extremely fierce attacks at Zhuowen. However, the Chariot of Zhuowen was extremely fast. It swept past in a flash, not giving these strange black shadows any chance to attack. Soon, the Chariot of Chariot arrived at the border of the extraterritorial battlefield. Zhuowen quickly put away the Chariot of Chariot and entered the macro world. The macro world turned into a speck of dust and fell silently on the ground at the border. Zhuowen stood in the great world as his immense divine sense continued to spread out in all directions, probing everything around him. After a long while, when Zhuowen did not detect any auras, he quietly released the disguised Duan Jipeng and the other 2. Brother Duan, the 3 of you wait for my news at the border for now. You can leave when the time is right. After Zhuowen instructed Duan Jipeng and the other 2, he took out an ordinary divine warship and flew towards the center of the extraterritorial battlefield. There were few people at the border, and there was no one at all. Duan Jipeng's group of 3 was the safest place to wait. As long as Zhuan attracted everyone's attention, no one would notice when Duan Jipeng and the other two left. The speed of the divine warship was not fast. Compared to the chariot of chariots, the difference was simply too great. Zhuan stood on the deck of the divine battleship, his hands behind his back as he silently surveyed his surroundings. His divine sense spread out without restraint. The border was indeed deserted. Zhuan did not encounter any human cultivators along the way. Instead, he encountered many foreign cultivators who were in a sorry state. These foreign cultivators were all defeated by human cultivators and fled to the border to avoid disaster. However, these foreign cultivators could clearly feel the powerful aura on Zhuan's body. They did not dare to provoke Zhuan and hid far away. Zhuan was too lazy to pay attention to these foreign cultivators. He was looking for other human cultivators. If he had guessed correctly, after Golden Lamp Shakyamuni, Sakyamuni, and the others returned to their encampment, they would definitely think of ways to arrest him. Perhaps, most of the cultivators in the entire extraterritorial battlefield were searching for his whereabouts. Half a day later, Zhuan's divine warship stopped on top of a mountain range. He scanned the area with his divine sense and immediately discovered a group of human cultivators hiding in a valley a few hundred kilometers away. There were about 7 or 8 human cultivators in this group. At this moment, their faces were flushed with excitement as they stared at Zhuan, who had stopped on top of the mountain range. Look, this person is exactly the same as Zhuan. He is Zhuan. How can we not find him after searching high and low for him? The leader was a middle-aged man with a pointed face. His divine sense swept across the mountain range where Zhuan was but did not dare to approach. He knew very well that Zhuan, who was wanted, was definitely not a simple person. It should be known that this person was jointly wanted by several super realm experts. How could a person who was wanted by super realm experts be weak? Moreover, the conditions of this bounty were extremely lax. As long as they could find Zhuan's trace, they would immediately receive the reward. Thinking of the generous reward, the pointy-faced middle-aged man and the 7 or 8 people led by him clenched their fists in excitement. Boss, hurry up and send a message to the person who issued the bounty. Also, do we have to activate this bracelet they gave us? The pointy-faced middle-aged man, who was followed by a young man, shook the black bracelet on his wrist and said in a deep voice, "I'll inform the person who issued the bounty first. The bracelet will be activated later." The pointy-faced middle-aged man was very cautious. He took out a communication jade talisman and sent a message to the person who issued the bounty. Who is the person who issued the bounty? Just after the middle-aged man sent the message, an indifferent voice suddenly came from above. The middle-aged man was so frightened that his whole body trembled. He suddenly raised his head and was shocked to find that Tun had unknowingly appeared in the sky above the valley, looking down at them coldly. "Ooh, how did you know we were here?" The middle-aged man looked as if he had seen a ghost. He had set up a concealment formation in the valley. Logically speaking, the outside world should not be able to detect the specific situation in the valley. Such a low-level concealment formation is nothing to me. Zhuan shook his head and stared at the middle-aged man. A terrifying aura erupted as he asked again, "Speak, who is the person who issued the bounty?" It's Sakyamuni and Golden Lamp Dharmaraja. Chapter 4593. Sakyamuni and Golden Lamp Dharmaraja. Zhuan's eyes narrowed dangerously, but he was not surprised. Sakyamuni had always been against Zhuan, and Golden Lamp Dharmaraja was the strongest in the group. It was within Zhuan's expectations that the two of them would be the initiators. Sush, sush. Zhuan tapped his glabella with his right hand, and streaks of soul sword essence shot out. A sword radiance flashed by, and one of the streaks of soul sword essence shot out, cutting off the right arm of the young man behind the middle-aged man. Ah! The young man clutched his severed arm, his face drained of blood as he screamed in agony. Don't think I don't know that the bracelet on your wrist has some kind of teleportation formation. Zhuan looked coldly at the young man, his eyes filled with unconcealable killing intent. Sir, please spare my life. Huang Xian was just acting on impulse. I didn't intend to activate the bracelet. The middle-aged man quickly knelt on the ground and kowtowed to Jun, begging for mercy. He could feel that the young man before him was much stronger than them. Just the streaks of soul sword essence floating behind the young man gave him a feeling of superiority, making it difficult for him to resist. There was no doubt that any of the streaks of soul sword essence floating behind Jun could easily kill him. Jun looked indifferent. If you want to live, you have to listen to me. Do you understand? Yes. The middle-aged man did not dare to disobey and kept kowtowing. Now, the situation was beyond his control. He had to agree even if he did not want to. In the Archean Heavenly Tao Academy's encampment. In a luxurious pavilion. Sakyamuni, Ghost Child, Su Jing, and Mi Haomiao sat in the hall, talking. It's been a few months. Why hasn't there been any news of Jun? Logically speaking, we have issued such a high bounty, and all the human cultivators in the extraterritorial battlefield are itching to take action. If Jun is still in the extraterritorial battlefield, it's impossible for there to be no news at all. Ghost Child frowned and asked in confusion. Su Jing and Mi Haomiao were also puzzled. It was indeed strange that there was no news at all for the past few months. Sakyamuni's eyes flickered. This can only mean one thing. Zhuan and the others are no longer in the battlefield. What? Could it be that they had already left the encampment? Have we been working for nothing for the past few months? The Ghost Child was shocked. Sakyamuni shook his head and said, they shouldn't have left from their encampment. We've already asked the guards at the Outworld battlefield, and there's no record of Zhuan and the others returning to their encampment. As for the other stations, Golden Lamp Fawang's men have already checked the records. Similarly, there are no records of Zhuan and the others entering. Su Jing asked curiously, what do you mean? They still have another place to go. Sakyamuni said with a wise look in his eyes. But the Ghost Child asked. The extraterritorial battlefield, the extraterritorial space. Sakyamuni said in a low voice. They dare to go there? That's an extremely dangerous place. The Ghost Child did not understand. That's not necessarily true. Let's continue to wait. If they really go to the extraterritorial space, they will definitely come back, unless they really want to die. Sakyamuni said with a faint smile. Although the Ghost Child and the others still had some doubts, they knew that the only thing they could do now was wait. But someone sent a message. Sakyamuni's eyes suddenly lit up as he took out the Jade Communication Talisman from his waist. After reading the Jade Communication Talisman, Sakyamuni revealed a big smile. Someone has already seen Zhuan. Really? The Ghost Child, Su Jing, and Mi Haomiao all stood up excitedly. They had waited bitterly for several months and finally received news of Jun. Golden Lamp Fawang has also sent me a message. He wants us to gather at the exit of the extraterritorial battlefield immediately. Sakyamuni stood up and said. Then, Sakyamuni and the others left the pavilion and went straight to the exit of the extraterritorial battlefield. At this moment, many people had already gathered at the exit, and the leader was Golden Lamp Fawang. In addition to Golden Lamp Fawang, there were also the Blood-Robed King, Guan Yihan, and other experts from various super realms. Sakyamuni, have you received any other news? Golden Lamp Fawang saw Sakyamuni and the others and quickly came forward to ask. Sakyamuni shook his head and said, just the first message, nothing else. Golden Lamp Fawang frowned and said, this is strange. Since we have found Zhuan, shouldn't we immediately activate the teleportation bracelet we gave him? Why haven't we teleported yet? Sakyamuni pondered. He was also puzzled. Suddenly, Sakyamuni felt something and looked at his right wrist. He saw that he was also wearing a black bracelet, and at this moment, the black bracelet was bursting with a blazing white light. Then, a strong wave of teleportation burst out from the bracelet and completely enveloped Sakyamuni. Not only Sakyamuni, but Golden Lamp Fawang, Guan Yihan, and the others who were wearing black bracelets were also enveloped by the light of teleportation. In the blink of an eye, Sakyamuni, Golden Lamp Fawang, and the others disappeared. The moment they opened their eyes, they found themselves in a huge valley. In front of the valley, there was an exit, which was directly connected to a long corridor. At the exit, a young man in black stood proudly. Next to him, a middle-aged man and a group of people timidly followed behind. Yun, Sakyamuni's eyes were like torches. He recognized the young man in black at a glance. Wasn't he Zhuowen? But when he saw the group of timid people behind Yun, his pupils shrank into needles, and an ominous premonition arose in his heart. You're quite fast. Welcome to the place I've prepared for you. Zhuowen grinned, and an array flag appeared in his hand at an unknown time. Oh no, it's a trap. Sakyamuni, Golden Lamp Fawang, and the others' faces changed dramatically. They all cast out their respective celestial bodies, surrounded their bodies, and then rushed toward Zhu. Zhuowen's lips curled slightly. Without thinking, he threw out the formation flag in his hand. The formation flag was thrown high, drew a parabola in the air, and finally fell heavily in the middle of the valley. Crash! In an instant, the scenery in the valley changed completely. A terrifying force surged out, causing the pressure in the valley to rapidly increase to an extremely terrifying level. Golden Lamp Fawang was the first to hit the edge of the valley. He was bathed in a blazing golden light, as if he had become an inextinguishable furnace. His celestial body was also a giant holding a huge golden lamp. Its huge body carried a terrifying golden light, and it hit the edge of the valley where Zhuan was. Boom! A terrifying explosion sounded, and the valley collapsed directly, turning into dust. But an invisible barrier appeared at the edge of the valley, blocking Golden Lamp Fawang's full blow. Thump, thump, thump. Golden Lamp Fawang's celestial body could not help but take 3 steps back. He looked at the invisible barrier in front of him in horror. What kind of formation was this? It was so strong. Chapter 45-94. The moment Golden Lamp Dharmaraja retreated, Sakyamuni, Ghost Child, Guan Yihan, and the other experts of celestial phenomenon of heaven and earth also rushed over and slammed into the invisible barrier. There was a continuous explosion in the starry sky, and the surrounding starry sky was torn open. After the horrible explosion, Sakyamuni, Ghost Child, and the others were also blocked by the invisible barrier and then retreated. However, the invisible barrier also shook violently. Obviously, the joint impact of so many experts of celestial phenomenon of heaven and earth had caused it a lot of pressure. Zhuan stood outside the valley, which had been turned into dust, and looked at the experts of celestial phenomenon of heaven and earth with a grave expression. This formation, which Zhuan had obtained from Tan Jipeng's legacy relics, was called the Divine Cosmic Formation. It was a killing formation at the peak of the 4th heaven of Eternal Realm. Zhuan certainly could not set up a killing formation at this level. It was too profound. However, he had the formation flag, which was more than enough to activate this formation. This formation was enough to trap any expert of celestial phenomenon of heaven and earth. However, the attack just now had caused the formation to shake violently, which made Zhuowen's heart sink. He knew very well that the people in the Divine Cosmic Formation were too powerful. This formation might not be able to trap them completely. A formation at the peak of the 4th heaven of Eternal Realm. Zhuan, it seems that you have obtained a lot of good things in the legacy relics. Sakyamuni stared coldly at Zhuowen and said in a gloomy voice. Golden Lamp Dharmaraja, Ghost Child, and the other experts also showed blazing eyes. The more good things Zhuan had, the stronger the killing intent in their hearts. You're free. Zhuan looked back at the middle-aged man behind him and said indifferently. The middle-aged man and the others were relieved and fled the place in embarrassment. There are too many of you. I won't keep you company. Zhuan cupped his fists at the people in the formation. Then he stepped into the air and turned into a streamer and disappeared. Damn it, this kid is really hateful. Golden Lamp Fawang, Ghost Child, and the others were seething with anger. Originally, it should have been them who schemed against Zhuowen, but they didn't expect that they would be schemed against by Zhuan. They felt extremely indignant in their hearts. Everyone, there's no use in wallowing in self-pity right now. We should work together to destroy this array. That's the way to go. Sakura said calmly. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone came back to their senses. Nephew Shirtion is right. We should join forces to break the formation now. Although this formation is strong, we can break it if we gather all our strength. Golden Lamp Dharmaraja said in a deep voice. Yes. We still have time. Don't we have some people in the encampment? So what if this kid entered the encampment before us? He won't leave so easily. The ghost child quickly added. Shakyamuni and Ice Ghost King are right. Now is not the time for us to kick up a fuss. Let's break the formation first. In an instant, everyone reached an agreement and began to jointly attack the invisible barrier in front of them. At the same time, after leaving the valley, Jun took out the chariot and quickly rushed toward the encampment of the Archean Heavenly Tao Academy. He knew very well that Sakyamuni and Golden Lamp Dharmaraja must have some people in the encampment of the Archean Heavenly Tao Academy. He took out the communication jade charm and sent a message to Duan Jipeng and the others. Then, he rushed toward the encampment of the Archean Heavenly Tao Academy without looking back. At the border of the extraterritorial battlefield, Duan Jipeng, Luo Ye, and Zi Yang had been waiting for a long time. Master has sent a message. Zi Yang suddenly took out the communication jade charm from her waist. After checking it, she couldn't help but say, "There's a change of plan. Brother Zhuo wants us to go directly to the encampment of the Archean Heavenly Tao Academy." Duan Jipeng said in a deep voice. "What? To the encampment of the Archean Heavenly Tao Academy?" Luo Ye and Zi Yang's expressions changed greatly. The encampment of the Archean Heavenly Tao Academy was full of enemies like Golden Lamp Dharmaraja and Sakyamuni. Wasn't going to the Archean Heavenly Tao Academy like a lamb in a tiger's den? I believe in Brother Zhuo. Since he wants us to go to the encampment of the Archean Heavenly Tao Academy, he must have his reasons. Duan Jipeng said in a deep voice. Zi Yang and Luo Ye nodded. They had followed Zhuoan for so long, so they naturally understood his character and style of doing things. Let's go, Duan Jipeng said as he led the group toward the encampment. Sush. At the entrance of the encampment of the Archean Heavenly Tao Academy, there was a sound of something breaking through the air. Zhuan drove the chariot to the huge entrance. "Or you stop it." At the entrance, two cultivators guarding the entrance immediately raised the long spears in their hands and stabbed at Zhuan the moment they saw Zhuan. The two of them didn't show any mercy at all. It was a deadly attack. A cold light flashed in Zhuowen's eyes. He knew that the cultivators guarding the entrance had been bribed by Golden Lamp Dharmaraja and the others. Without thinking, he released two soul sword essences and shot them toward the two cultivators guarding the entrance. Boom! Boom! With two loud explosions, the two cultivators guarding the entrance screamed and flew into the air before landing heavily on the ground. At the same time, Zhuan grabbed at the void with his right hand. The soul sword essences condensed in front of him and turned into a giant golden sword that was dozens of feet long, hanging above his head. Break! Zhuan waved his sleeve. The giant golden sword that was suspended in the air flew out and hit the giant door heavily. With a loud explosion, the invisible barrier on the giant door collapsed inch by inch, turning into endless powder that scattered in the starry sky. With one sword, the restriction at the entrance of the encampment was destroyed as if it were nothing. When the giant door collapsed, the entire encampment shook violently. Countless cultivators flew out from all over the encampment and looked at the collapsed giant door in shock. Then, their gazes gathered on the figure floating above the entrance. He's Zhuoan? How dare he return to the encampment when he is wanted by many experts? Isn't he courting death? But he's really strong. The restriction at the entrance of the encampment is at the middle stage of the fourth heaven of the eternal realm, but it was destroyed by his sword. With such strength, it's no wonder he's wanted by so many experts. Nonsense, if he isn't strong, how could he be coveted by so many experts? And it is said that this boy has obtained the resources and inheritance of the mysterious relic. If I were strong enough, I would also want him. In the encampment, countless cultivators stared at Zhuan. They all stopped and did not dare to provoke Zhuan. Zhuowen surveyed his surroundings and immediately noticed many malicious gazes directed at him. He knew very well that the owners of these malicious gazes should be the people left in the encampment by Sakyamuni, Golden Lamp Master, and others. Without any hesitation, Zhuowen walked towards the teleportation array in the encampment. He walked very slowly, but the aura on his body became stronger and stronger as he continued to step forward. Like a storm, it spread throughout the encampment like an invincible god. Chapter 45-95. Sush. The moment Zhuo Wengang took a few steps forward, a beautiful figure appeared in front of him. Zhuan, how dare you return to the primordial Heavenly Tao Academy's encampment? A purple-clothed female cultivator with a graceful figure appeared in front of him. At this moment, she was glaring at Zhuowen with a complicated and angry look in her eyes. Amethyst King Zixuan? You're actually in the encampment. Zhuowen looked at the beautiful female cultivator in front of him, and his expression became extremely strange. Back in the ruins, Zixuan had been toyed with badly by the fatty. Even the most private secrets on his body had been exposed. He would never have thought that this female cultivator, who was born with a natural charm and was good at seduction, was actually a virgin. Zixuan naturally felt the strange expression in Zhuowen's eyes. She blushed and said, if you tell anyone about me, I'll kill you no matter what. Just as Zhuan was about to speak, several figures rushed out of the encampment and landed in different directions around Zhuowen, sealing off all possible escape routes for Zhuan. Su Jing, Mi Hao Miao, Mysterious Thunder King, Gong Shuekuan. Zhuan looked around at the people who rushed over. Other than a few that he didn't know, there were 3 that he was familiar with. Zhuan, since you dare to enter the encampment, you won't be able to escape. Aren't you going to surrender? Su Jiaying said proudly. Zhuowen said indifferently, this is the primordial Heavenly Tao Academy's encampment. There are rules that forbid private fights here. Don't tell me you dare to attack me? Mi Hao Miao sneered, how can you be so naive? These rules are naturally used to restrain the weak. We've already bribed the manager of the encampment. There's no harm in us taking action here. Moreover, you've barged into the encampment. This is a serious crime. It's naturally not a big problem for us to capture criminals in the encampment. Gong Shuekuan sighed. You'd better hand over the items in the ruins. As long as you leave it to me, I won't do anything. Zhuan looked at Gong Shuekuan coldly. He had misjudged Gong Shuekuan before. Gong Shuekuan was actually such a shameless and thick-skinned person. Using his slot to enter the ruins, not only did he not help him in any way, he even betrayed him. Now, he was even hypocritically asking for something from the ruins. He was simply too disgusting. Zixuan, if you don't want me to expose that secret to others, then help me. Zhuan glanced at Zixuan and secretly transmitted his voice to her. Zixuan couldn't help but be stunned. She didn't expect that Zhuowen would actually secretly send her a sound transmission. Could it be that he wasn't afraid of being discovered? Don't worry, I have a special secret method to transmit my voice. Others won't be able to detect my voice transmission. I've also concealed your voice transmission waves. Don't worry and reply to me through voice transmission. Zhuowen transmitted his voice again. Zixuan's beautiful eyes flickered as she replied coldly, it's impossible for me to help you deal with Gong Shuekuan and the others. At most, I'll just stand by and watch. The corners of Zhuowen's mouth curled up slightly and he said, that's fine too. I hope you can keep your promise. Looking at the smile on Zhuowen's face, Zixuan's pretty face changed slightly. She immediately knew that she had fallen into his trap. However, she also knew that since she had already promised him, she didn't intend to break her promise. Zhuan, are you going to hand over the things in the ruins or not? Su Jiaying urged impatiently. Zhuan calculated in his heart. With the speed of Duan Jipeng and the others, they should be arriving at the station soon. He knew that if he wanted Duan Jipeng and the others to leave safely, he had to make a scene in the station and attract all the people that Sakyamune and Golden Lamp Fuang had arranged here. Of course not. Zhuowen said slowly. Suddenly, he took a step forward and rushed towards Su Jing. Little bastard, you're really courting death. How dare you come to my place? Su Jiang sneered and unleashed his divine power, forming a huge celestial body of heaven and earth behind him. Su Jiang's lawful embodiment of heaven and earth was a 1,000-meter-tall golden armored giant covered in shining golden armor. Boom! The huge golden armored giant raised his palm and blasted toward Zhuowen's head without mercy. The space above the encampment was completely torn apart. Terrifying black holes and ravines were torn open, extending tens of millions of feet long. Without hesitation, Zhuowen released a starry sky world to meet the attack. You're really courting death. When Su Jiang saw that Zhuowen had used the starry sky world to resist his lawful embodiment of heaven and earth, his face was full of mockery. Although he was surprised that Zhuowen's cultivation had broken through to the inverse ancient starlight realm, he didn't care too much. So what if he had broken through to the inverse ancient starlight realm? The gap between them was still too big. Boom! The golden armored giant's terrifying palm landed heavily on the starry sky world. Su Jiang's pupils shrank when he saw that the seemingly fragile starry sky world blocked the golden armored giant's palm. The starry giant lifted the starry sky world and stood up abruptly, walking forward step by step. What's wrong with this guy's starry sky world? How can it resist the law phenomenon? Zi Yishuan, Gong Shuequan, and the others were dumbfounded as they stared at the starry sky world in front of Zhun. Su Jiang felt embarrassed. He activated the divine power in his body and the law phenomenon burst out with an even more blazing golden light, suppressing Zhuowen's starry sky world. However, Su Jiang's complacency didn't last long. He was shocked to find that 3 starry sky worlds had appeared around him and bombarded the law phenomenon. Boom, boom, boom. In an instant, there was a terrifying explosion. The golden armored giant on Su Jiang's body couldn't help but take a few steps back. The moment Su Jiang stepped back, Zhuowen dashed out through the gap between the two. What? This guy has 4 starry sky worlds? How is this possible? Su Jiang couldn't help but mutter to herself as she retreated. Chase. Gong Shuequan was flustered and exasperated. He stepped into the air and chased after Zhuowen like a bolt of lightning. Mei Haomiao and the other experts also followed closely behind. After Su Jiang came to his senses, he hurriedly chased after them, afraid that he would miss the opportunity to get a share of the loot. Zi Yishuan hovered in the air and silently watched Gong Shuequan and the others leave. In the end, he didn't chase after them. The moment Zhuowen escaped, several figures appeared from the dark in the Archean Heavenly Tao Academy's encampment and followed closely behind. These people hiding in the dark were basically people planted by Sakyamuni and Golden Lamp Shakyamuni. Zhuowen deliberately escaped toward the extraterritorial battlefield. Soon, he arrived at the entrance of the extraterritorial battlefield. At this moment, the giant gate had been destroyed beyond recognition by Zhun. The guards were no longer there. Zhuowen left the giant gate unimpeded and entered the extraterritorial battlefield. Chapter 45-96. The moment Zhuowen left, a large number of figures rushed out of the encampment like a swarm of locusts. Not long after Zhuowen and the others left, 3 figures quietly entered the encampment of the Archean Heavenly Tao Academy. These 3 figures quietly entered the depths of the encampment and then headed toward the teleportation formation in the encampment in an extremely low-key manner. These 3 people. Zi Yishuan, who was about to return to the encampment, glanced at the 3 low-key figures with a trace of doubt in her beautiful eyes. These 3 figures were Duan Jipeng, Ziyang, and Luoya. After receiving Zhuowen's notice, they quickly rushed toward the encampment of the Archean Heavenly Tao Academy. When they saw that the entrance to the encampment had been destroyed beyond recognition, they knew that Zhuowen had already caused a ruckus in the encampment before them. And they finally understood why Zhuowen had asked them to come to the encampment of the Archean Heavenly Tao Academy. Zhuowen obviously intended to use them as bait to attract the attention of everyone in the encampment so as to create an opportunity for them to leave. No one would have thought that Zhuowen would give such an important item as the domain source fragment to Duan Jipeng and the others. The teleportation formation is in front of us. As long as we successfully teleport away, our mission will be completed. Duan Jipeng looked at the teleportation hall not far in front of them and breathed a sigh of relief. Zi Yang and Luo Ya's beautiful eyes also revealed a look of excitement. Their originally anxious hearts gradually relaxed. When the three of them arrived at the entrance of the teleportation hall, a beautiful figure suddenly blocked their way. Duan Jipeng and the others could not help but look at the beautiful figure in front of them. The moment they saw the latter's face clearly, their hearts jumped. The beautiful figure who blocked them was none other than the Amethyst King, Yun. At this moment, Zi Yixuan's beautiful purple eyes sized up Duan Jipeng and the others, and her willowy eyebrows slightly knitted together. She felt that the three figures in front of her were somewhat familiar, but when she looked carefully, she did not recognize them at all. Although Duan Jipeng and the others were nervous, their faces were very calm. They believed in Zhuowen's ability to change their appearance, and they did not think that Zixuan could see through their disguises. "Sir, what's the matter?" Duan Jipeng bowed respectfully to Zixuan. Zixuan's beautiful eyes stared at Duan Jipeng without blinking. Suddenly, she smiled charmingly and said, "Have we met before?" Zixuan was too beautiful. She had a natural charm as she looked around. Duan Jipeng's heart sank, but his face revealed a trace of infatuation, and he said with a silly smile, "I've seen it. You are my dream lover." Zixuan's beautiful eyes narrowed, revealing traces of doubt. She muttered to herself, "Could it be that I sensed wrongly? You heartless man. Didn't we agree that we would be together forever? Now that you've seen a beautiful girl, have you forgotten everything?" Suddenly, Ziyang took a step forward and slapped Duan Jipeng's face. She grabbed his ear and spoke indignantly. Feeling the pain, Duan Jipeng hurriedly knelt down and begged for mercy. "Wife, please spare my life. It's not that I'm heartless, it's just that this senior is too beautiful." Ziyang gave Duan Jipeng a few more slaps as she said in a sharp voice, "You still dare to say that? See if I don't beat you to death today. In the future, you're only allowed to look at me. You're not allowed to look at other women." Luo Ye walked forward and said apologetically to Zixuan, "Senior, I've let you see a joke. My sister is especially easy to get jealous, and this brother-in-law of mine is also a dishonest man. That's why she flipped out on the spot. Please forgive me." Zixuan frowned slightly and glanced at Duan Jipeng and Ziyang. After discovering that their auras were indeed very unfamiliar, she shook her head and said, "It's fine. I'm the one who's blocking your way." As she spoke, Zixuan gave up her seat slightly. Luo Ye nodded to Zixuan and brought Duan Jipeng and Ziyang into the teleportation hall. Zixuan stopped outside the hall. Her willowy brows were deeply knitted. The more she thought about it, the more she felt that something was amiss. Very strange. Then why did Zhuowen suddenly come to the primeval Heavenly Tao Academy's encampment? Moreover, he came and left. What's his purpose? Zixuan pondered for a moment and suddenly came to a realization. If Zhuowen wants to escape, he doesn't need to come to the primeval Heavenly Tao Academy's encampment. He can just hide in the extraterritorial battlefield. Then he deliberately came here to lure away the people who are eyeing him covetously in the encampment. Then he only has one purpose, and that is to create an opportunity for someone to leave. In an instant, Zixuan thought of Duan Jipeng, Ziyang, and Luo Ye, who were by Zhuowen's side. It's just the three of them. Could it be the three of them? Oh no. Zixuan's expression changed slightly as she hurriedly rushed into the teleportation hall. She immediately saw that the teleportation array in the depths of the hall had been activated. Countless white rays of light surged out. As for Duan Jipeng and the other two, they were enveloped in the white light and their figures were faintly discernible. "Wait!" Zixuan shouted and attracted the attention of everyone in the hall. Duan Jipeng and the other two, who were in the midst of the teleportation fluctuations, followed the sound. When they saw Zixuan rushing over, their expressions changed slightly. Swoosh! Finally, in the instant that Zixuan rushed to not far from the teleportation array, Duan Jipeng and the other two had already disappeared inside the teleportation array. Damn it! This one really schemed well. Turns out that he still had this trick up his sleeve. Ziyuan expression was ugly. She hurriedly took out chaos crystals and handed them to the guard guarding the teleportation array, saying, "Help me teleport out too." The guard gave Ziyuan a nonchalant glance and said, "Apologies, today, due to special reasons, the teleportation array's work ends here. Come again tomorrow." Ziyuan's beautiful eyes went wide, looking at the guard in disbelief. "What do you mean? Do you believe that I'll reflect to your superiors?" Ziyuan said coldly. "Even if you reflect to your superiors, it's also useless. You guys caused a ruckus inside the encampment, openly violating the encampment's rules. Do you really think that you're the encampment's owner? Our lord stationed here gives you face, but we might not give you face," the guard said coldly. Ziyuan was fuming with rage, but she also knew that wanting to use the teleportation array now was impossible. Unless she really contacted the person guarding the encampment, but this would also delay time. By the time she teleported, Duan Jipeng and the others would have long fled. Really close. Ziyuan actually recognized us in the end. In a canyon in the Archean Heavenly Tao Academy, a white light appeared. After Duan Jipeng and the other two appeared, they all had lingering fears. "We'll leave immediately. If Ziyuan catches up, we'll all be finished." Duan Jipeng made a prompt decision and quickly left the Archean Heavenly Tao Academy with the two women. Of course, they did not take the conventional route, but deliberately took a long detour. They were also worried that Ziyuan would chase after them. If they took the conventional route, it would be very easy for them to be caught. After returning to the Kanglan domain, I must go into seclusion and break through to the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth, Luo Ye said in a deep voice. Duan Jipeng and Xiang also nodded heavily. This time, they had experienced too much in the foreign battlefield and also understood how weak they were. "I hope that Brother Zhuo will be fine," Duan Jipeng muttered softly, his eyes filled with worry. Chapter 4597. Killing was everywhere in the vast extraterritorial battlefield. Battles between the human clan and the foreign clan could be seen everywhere. A ray of light flew across the vast void of the extraterritorial battlefield and stopped in a huge valley. At this moment, there were more than 10 people fighting in the valley. On one side, there were both male and female human clan cultivators, and on the other side, there were strange-looking foreign clan cultivators. The battle between the two sides had reached its climax. From the situation of the battle, the human clan cultivators were obviously at a disadvantage. They were completely suppressed by the foreign clan cultivators and were retreating. The moment the ray of light entered the valley, it immediately alarmed the two sides. Both sides stopped in tacit understanding and looked at the ray of light that stopped in the valley. When the ray of light disappeared, everyone realized that it was a luxurious and powerful chariot in front of them. A black-robed young man sat on the chariot. There are actually people in such a remote valley? The black-robed young man frowned and shook his head helplessly. He was Zhuowen, who had escaped from the primordial Heavenly Tao Academy's encampment. He entered the extraterritorial battlefield and took out the chariot to enter the depths of the battlefield. He had been to this valley before. It was remote and quiet, and no one cared about it. He originally thought that there shouldn't be many people in this valley, but he didn't expect to meet so many people as soon as he arrived. Gong Shuekuan, Su Jing, and the others followed closely behind Zhuan. As Zhuan didn't escape at full speed, Gong Shuekuan and the others didn't lose sight of Zhuan. It's a human clan cultivator. Looks like he's their companion. Kill him. The leader of the foreign clan cultivators was a foreign clan cultivator with the head of a cow and the body of a horse. He glanced at Zhuowen from the corner of his eyes. His huge cow nose suddenly whistled and spewed out strong white gas as he spoke to the two foreign clan cultivators behind him. Yes. The two foreign clan cultivators nodded and laughed sinisterly as they rushed towards Zhuan. Fellow cultivator, be careful. The leader of the human cultivators was a middle-aged man with a resolute face. Seeing the two outsiders charging toward Zhuowen under the orders of the ox-headed outsider, he couldn't help but shout out a warning. "Ha! You'd better take care of yourselves first." The bull-headed alien sneered, raised his huge axe, and chopped at the middle-aged man. In an instant, the middle-aged man fell into a disadvantageous position and was forced to retreat. At this moment, the two alien races had already arrived in front of Zhuowen, each of them wielding a divine spear and thrusting it towards Zhun. Human, it's your fault for being so blind that you actually came to this valley. That's just courting death. The two outsiders grinned maliciously. They could see at a glance that Zhuowen's cultivation was only at the early stage defying ancient starlight realm, which was equivalent to them. However, there were two of them, while Zhuowen was only one person. They didn't think that Zhuowen would be a match for the two of them. However, just as the two of them approached Zhuowen, a gigantic palm descended from the sky and landed heavily on top of Zhuowen and the two of them. Boom! The huge palm slammed heavily into the valley, and in an instant, the entire starry sky resounded with a series of terrifying explosions. In the blink of an eye, the huge valley was turned into a pile of rubble. The two sides who were originally fighting had long noticed that something was wrong and hurriedly rushed out of the valley. They looked at the huge palm that fell from the sky in horror, their eyes full of fear. Law embodiment of heaven and earth? The bull-headed alien looked at the palm that fell on the ground, swallowed his saliva, and cried out in alarm. Among their team, the strongest person was only at the late stage defying ancient starlight realm. Although the bull-headed alien team had the advantage in numbers, they could be wiped out with a flip of the hand if they encountered a law embodiment of heaven and earth. Zhun, you can't escape anymore. Outside the valley ruins, an enormous roar that shook the heavens and the earth resounded throughout the world like the might of the heavens. Then, the cow-headed outsider and the middle-aged man's team were flabbergasted to see a golden armored giant that was 3 million meters tall striding towards them. There was no doubt that this was the law embodiment of heaven and earth, the unique power of a law embodiment of heaven and earth. In addition, behind the golden armored giant, there were many figures that rushed over. These figures had a terrifying aura that was not weaker than the golden armored giant. Some of them were even stronger than the golden armored giant. There was no doubt that these were all law embodiment of heaven and earth experts. What the hell is going on? Why are there so many law embodiment of heaven and earth experts all of a sudden? The members of the Oxhead alien race team were trembling as they stared at the terrifying figures in horror. At a glance, there were 7 or 8 law embodiment of heaven and earth experts. In addition, there were dozens of peak-defying ancient starlight realm experts. Such a force was enough to run rampant in the extraterritorial battlefield. No one dared to provoke them. What made the bull-headed alien even more bitter was that these law embodiment of heaven and earth experts were all human clan cultivators. None of them were foreign race cultivators. Their situation could be said to be precarious. However, to their relief, these human clan cultivators did not seem to pay attention to them. Instead, they surrounded the valley ruins. In the valley ruins, smoke and dust gradually dissipated. Everyone looked over and found that the two alien race cultivators had been completely smashed into meat paste by the palm, their souls scattered. And there was a figure standing upright in the valley ruins like a spear. He was not affected by the palm at all. How is this possible? How is this kid not dead? The bull-headed alien saw this figure and could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. He stared at this figure. The middle-aged man was also in disbelief. That was an attack of the law embodiment of heaven and earth. It was enough to destroy any defying ancient starlight realm cultivator. And this young man, who was only at the early defying ancient starlight realm, was unscathed. It was too strange. Little bastard, why aren't you running? The golden armored giant stepped forward and stood in front of Jun. He looked down at the latter and sneered. Gong Shuekuan, Mei Hao Miao, and the others blocked the other directions, completely blocking all of Zhuowen's escape routes. Zhuowen stood in the valley ruins and sneered, I've found a suitable place to bury myself. Naturally, I don't plan to run. Everyone was stunned. Then, Su Jing, who had merged into the golden armored giant, laughed and said eerily, You know yourself well. You found a good place to bury yourself in advance. Hee hee, this place is remote and uninhabited. It's indeed a suitable place to bury you. Mei Haomiao also mocked. Zhuan shook his head and said, "This is indeed a good place to bury myself. But it's not the place to bury me. It's the place to bury all of you." Everyone was stunned and then laughed. Everyone looked at Zhuan as if they were looking at a fool. Chapter 45-98. Is there something wrong with this guy's brain? The bull-headed man looked at Zhuan in disbelief. He was completely stunned by Zhuan's arrogant words. This kid was only at the inverse ancient starlight level. What right did he have to spout nonsense in front of so many lawful embodiment of heaven and earth experts? What was the difference between this and seeking death? How arrogant. Today you will die here. Su Jing snorted coldly and commanded the golden armored giant to attack Zhuan with its palm. The golden armored giant's body emitted a blazing golden light. It was like an unprecedentedly terrifying sun that lit up the entire starry sky. The aura of the golden armored giant also reached an unprecedented level. Rumble. The power of this palm strike was far stronger than the previous one. Countless huge gullies were formed in the void and swept out in all directions. So powerful! The bull-headed man and the rest were all shocked. They stared at the huge golden palm that was falling towards them. Zhuan stood firmly on the ground. He slowly raised his head and looked at the approaching golden palm. Then he gently tapped the space between his eyebrows with his right sword finger. A terrifying spiritual energy gushed out of Zhuan's eyebrows and formed a huge purple-gold divine sword above his head. Go! Zhuan flicked the void with his right hand. The purple-gold divine sword above his head broke through the void and slashed at the huge palm that was about to fall. Rumble! With a terrifying explosion, the void around the valley ruins was completely torn apart into a vacuum zone. An unprecedented explosion set off with a loud bang and continued to explode. After that, everyone was shocked to discover that the golden armored giant's terrifying golden palm had collapsed before everyone's eyes, turning into countless golden specks of light. What's going on? In the distance, the bull-headed man and the human race cultivators stared at the scene in shock. The golden armored giant's terrifying palm collapsed as soon as it landed. What happened? Gong Xuequan, Mei Haomiao, and the other lawful embodiment of heaven and earth experts narrowed their eyes as they watched this scene in astonishment. Zhuan slowly walked out of the countless specks of light. Above his head, the 1,000-meter-long divine sword quietly floated, emitting a terrifying and heart-palpitating aura. The golden armored giant couldn't help but take a few steps back, looking at Zhuan in disbelief. How can your divine soul be so strong? Inside the golden armored giant, Su Jing's voice turned sharp as she stared at Zhuan. Zhuan was expressionless and did not answer. Instead, he took a step forward with his right foot and leaped onto the divine sword. Go! Zhuan let out a soft cry, and the 1,000-foot-long divine sword under his feet shot through the air, rapidly heading toward the golden armored giant. Do you really think I can't do anything to you? Su Jing said coldly. She formed a seal with both hands and a huge golden halberd appeared in the golden armored giant's hands. Rip! The golden armored giant slashed down with the halberd in his right hand. His target was Zhuan. Boom! The halberd, which was emitting a blazing golden light, heavily collided with the divine sword. Then, a terrifying shockwave of energy erupted from the collision. Then, everyone was horrified to find that the huge halberd had been pierced through by the giant sword, shattering into countless specks of light. The 1,000-foot-long divine sword pierced through the air like a hot knife through butter and hit the golden armored giant's right arm heavily. In front of the 1,000-foot-long divine sword, the golden armored giant's right arm was like a piece of tofu. It couldn't stop the sword at all and was completely shattered. Then his body, left arm, feet, and head all exploded into countless golden specks of light. Just like that, the 1,000-foot-long golden armored giant shattered into countless specks of light in front of everyone's eyes. Su Jing, who had melted into the golden armored giant, flew backward and spat out a mouthful of blood. Her face was pale. Su Jing, die. Zhuan floated in the void and pointed with his right hand. the 1,000-foot-long divine sword slashed down. No, Su Jiang shouted and was hit by the 1,000-foot-long divine sword. She couldn't bear the terrifying sword chi of the 1,000-foot-long divine sword and was torn into pieces. This is a joke. Is this guy really at Ni Gu Xingguang's cultivation? The bull-headed alien, the middle-aged man, and the others stood in the distance. Their bodies stiffened and they looked at the scene in disbelief. Ni Gu Xingguang's cultivation had killed a law embodiment of heaven and earth expert with a single slash. This was completely impossible, but it had happened right in front of their eyes. Gong Xuequn, Mi Hao Miao, and the others were completely stunned. Even they were caught off guard by this sudden turn of events. They knew that Zhuowen was powerful, but no matter how powerful he was only at Ni Gu Xingguang's cultivation. At most, he was comparable to Su Jiang, who was at the early stage of law embodiment of heaven and earth. But they never thought that Zhuowen would have the strength to kill a law embodiment of heaven and earth expert. This was too terrifying. Zhuowen floated in the air with the 1,000-foot-long divine sword around him. He looked around and said, "Who else wants to die?" Before he advanced, Zhuowen's divine soul had already reached the middle stage of law embodiment of heaven and earth. The moment he advanced to Ni Gu Xingguang, Zhuowen's divine soul became stronger and was close to the late stage of law embodiment of heaven and earth. With such a powerful divine soul, it was more than enough to kill Su Jiang, who was at the early stage of law embodiment of heaven and earth. Zhuowen's voice was so loud that it exploded in the starry sky. It was deafening. Gong Xuequn's eyes flashed with a terrifying cold light. He snorted and said, "Don't be so smug. You may be strong, but do you think you can fight against so many lawful embodiment of heaven and earth cultivators by yourself?" Gong Xuequn's words immediately swept through the heavens and earth like an earthquake. The other lawful phenomenon of heaven and earth experts who had been shocked by Zhuowen's killing of Su Jiang all came back to their senses and were filled with confidence. Yes, Zhuowen was only one person, and there were so many of them. Why should they be afraid of him? Let's attack together. Kill him and we will all have a share of the relics. Gong Xuequn snorted coldly. Terrifying divine power surged out and formed a gigantic lawful embodiment of heaven and earth in the void behind him. Gong Xuequn's law embodiment of heaven and earth was a black panther that was filled with dense thunderbolts. This black panther was covered in a strange black armor. The surface of the black armor was filled with ferocious spikes. Countless thunderbolts lingered around the black armor. It was like a thunder beast, eternal and immortal. The rest of the law embodiment of heaven and earth experts also displayed their own law embodiments of heaven and earth. In the surroundings of the valley, giants that were millions of feet tall rose up and let out terrifying roars that shook the heavens and the earth. Around the starry sky, terrifying divine power waves swept out like a hurricane. The Oxhead foreign race was so frightened that they retreated far away. Only then could they resist the effects of the terrifying waves. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.